Chapter 635. The end of the second round. Lin Feng was surprised. Jun Emoshi had guessed right for the 11th person. It was Qingmeng Xing. How could you be so sure? Asked Lin Feng. Because Qingmeng Xian is like me. She knows the 1,000 dream shadows. So with her strength I was convinced she would come out now. Said Tang Yu, not giving time for Jun Emoshi to reply. The 1,000 dream shadows? Lin Feng was surprised. Indeed, in Celestial River, he had already seen a woman use it that used to stay with Lan Jiao. That attack not only belonged to the Tang clan but the Cosmic Pavilion as well. Are the 1,000 Shadows technique and the 1,000 Dream Shadows different? Asked Lin Feng. Generally speaking, asking other people about their skills and techniques was impolite, especially during the great competition of Xueyu. Tang Yu and him might end up as opponents at some point. Lin Feng knew her and was making friends, but he didn't know much about her. However, Lin Feng was still asking that question. That was a bit audacious and rude. However, he didn't seem to realize that his question was impolite. He was the type of person that didn't care about formalities. Of course, not caring about those things meant that he considered her as a good friend, and that he trusted her. The 1,000 dream shadows creates illusions which invade the atmosphere. You don't know which ones are true and which ones are fake. The 1,000 shadows creates clones with real bodies. It uses the power of the soul and belongs to my clan, the Tang clan. You need to have the blood of the Tang clan to be able to use it. Explained Tang Yu. She wasn't hiding anything from Lin Feng. However, he felt extremely sad for her. What you mean is that when you use it, if your clones get destroyed, you get injured, whispered Lin Feng. A moment before, Tang Yu had used her clones to open the way on the bridge and she had done Lin Feng could pass. She even used the attack twice. They had all been destroyed, so Tang Yu must be injured. Tang Yu didn't reply. That silence was proving that Lin Feng was right. And then you say you're fine. Your soul got injured. Your alcohol won't be enough to cure you, said Lin Feng, blaming her for telling him that she was fine. Jun Emoshi was looking at them and asked, "Are you guys dating?" Lin Feng was speechless. That guy thought he was funny. Blood soul grass. Lin Feng suddenly remembered something when he looked at Jun Emoshi. He then shook his hand and some red and shiny grass appeared. That was very beneficial for people's souls. Huh. Jun Emoshi looked at Lin Feng and was stupefied. The first time he had seen Lin Feng, Jun Emoshi's servant had fought against him over that grass. Many people looked over at them. Lin Feng had some blood soul grass. That stuff was extremely precious and it was very beneficial for people's souls. Luck might have played a certain role during the second round, but that key also required strength. Lin Feng wouldn't have been able to obtain the first key only relying on luck. Maybe Lin Feng will surprise us even more later on, thought Qingmeng Xian. The great competition of Xueyu was always full of surprises. This time Lin Feng might become an unexpected winner. Therefore, she didn't want to fight against him, especially that early. Time was passing slowly as more people finished. The first thing people were wondering when they came out was that they would have to be careful. So many others had come out before them, so they would end up being chosen by strong cultivators. Lin Feng also paid attention to the people who were coming out. Yu Tianming had finished 21st, Nie Yun from Tianfeng had finished 18th, and the two other people from Tianfeng had finished 40th and 50th. Lin Feng wouldn't care about those two. Jianshan had finished 24th. Lin Feng was astonished by Yun Fei Yang though. After the 50th came out, Yun Fei Yang walked out of the cave slowly. He didn't look ashamed at all as he walked towards them, sat down and drank alcohol. He looked natural, free and unrestrained. Lin Feng was speechless. Finally, after the 64th candidate finished, nobody else came out. The four others would never come out. They had died in the Flood Dragon Cave. Since the beginning, 80 people had died already. Some people were sad about that, of course. But their sadness was mixed with excitement. The second round was over. This time the third round would be different from the two previous ones. This time strength mattered most. Chapter 636. Immobile like a mountain, Xue Wuchang looked at the group of geniuses. There were 64 all standing on the fighting stage. Some stood alone while others had joined groups. Surprisingly, the biggest group was the one composed of Lin Feng and his friends. There were 5 people drinking and chatting. The others were different. They looked serious and solemn. They weren't as relaxed as Lin Feng and his friends. Congratulations on making it so far, said Xue Wuchang. In a flash, everybody's attention was on Xue Wuchang, even those who were usually sluggish and negligent. The last round of the great competition of Xue Yu is about to start. Real battles. Now everybody, let's climb out Flood Dragon Cave, said Xue Wuchang while pointing at the exit. Even though there was only one exit at the top of it, there was enough space to accommodate 64 people. Silhouettes flickered and they all climbed onto the tail of the Flood Dragon Cave. Then they sat down cross-legged. Let's go, said Jun Emoshi to Lin Feng and their other friends. Lin Feng downed a flask of hot unit and sharp lights twinkled in his eyes. The last round of the great competition of Xue Yu was about to start. Lin Feng shook his arm and the bottles of alcohol on the floor disappeared. Lin Feng and his friends stood up and jumped onto the Flood Dragon. They were waiting for Xue Wuchang. Now show your keys so that everyone can see them, said Xue Wuchang, and everybody obeyed. Xue Wuchang wanted to see the numbers at first glance. Even though those numbers didn't reflect people's strength, it still gave everybody an indication about their potential. Who's the first one? Many people who had come out after didn't know who the first one was. They were curious to find out who it was. Several people frowned. They first looked at Diling, but it wasn't him. Then they looked at Duan Wudao, Jun Emoji. They were third, fourth, and fifth. Where are the first and the second? Some of them asked, getting impatient. There! Someone shouted as they found Lin Feng. They were astonished. Everyone looked at the key, and then raised their heads to look at the face of the person holding it. Most were astonished, but some looked particularly excited though. Lin Feng. Lin Feng was full of vitality but had only broken through to the 5th Xianqi layer. When the crowd saw that people were looking at Lin Feng mockingly, they also burst into laughter. How could they not be amused? What a lucky guy. Such a piece of trash surprisingly managed to obtain the key, said someone who was laughing mockingly. Lin Feng turned his head and saw one of the 7 envoys. He had the 58th key in his hand, but he was still making fun of Lin Feng because of his cultivation level. He was trying to make himself look better by making fun of the first place to make up for his near last place key. End of the rankings. 6th one from the bottom, said Lin Feng indifferently, and then he didn't pay attention to that person anymore. People from Tianfeng were astonished, especially the 3rd envoy. Lin Feng had just humiliated them. Piece of trash. If you're brave, choose me then, said the 3rd envoy from Tianfeng coldly. He was the 6th one from the end, but he wanted to prove to everyone that he was strong. Lin Feng was the first one, so if he killed Lin Feng he would prove to everyone that he was strong. But Lin Feng ignored him, he despised him. After the crowd got over their surprise that Lin Feng had obtained the first key, they looked for the second one. There was a beautiful woman on his side, Tang Yuyu. People were astonished again. Surprisingly, the first and second positions weren't held by the 8 most outstanding geniuses of the competition. Alright, let's start the 3rd round. I would like to remind you that it is here where you will be able to dazzle. Even if you didn't get a good key, you can still finish as a dazzling participant. You will also be able to obtain some treasures from Shengong if you live. If you die, then you won't obtain anything, said Xue Wuchang slowly. Everyone looked even more impatient. Indeed, being able to be on the fighting stage at the great competition of Xue Yu was an honor, a glorious moment. But knowing that they would also obtain some kind of treasure from it, Shengong would be good to them. If you finish higher up in the rankings you will obtain even more amazing treasures, added Xue Wuchang, making everybody feel even more determined. Alright, let's start now. Lin Feng, you're first, said Xue Wuchang, nodding at Lin Feng. In a flash, Lin Feng jumped in the middle of the stage. Lin Feng, you obtained the first key, so you are the first one to choose. You can challenge anyone except for those that finished in the top 10. The crowd was focused on Lin Feng. They were impatient to see who he was going to choose. With his strength, he was probably going to choose one of the worst ones. Lin Feng glanced at the crowd. There weren't many people who were afraid of him. Actually, many people hoped to be chosen. They all wanted to defeat the one who had obtained the first key. That would be a prestigious victory. Finally, Lin Feng looked at the 3rd envoy who was also staring him down. The 3rd envoy wasn't weak at all, and he took the initiative to stand up. He was smiling coldly. He was already getting ready to fight. So many people want to fight against me because I have the first key, right? Said Lin Feng upset. He then looked at the third envoy and said, since you really want to fight, just come over then. The third envoy smiled and jumped forwards. He would face Lin Feng. You piece of shit. You're really a piece of trash. I will show you how a real man fights, said the third envoy coldly. Lin Feng slowly raised his head and looked at Xue Wuchang. Mister, can we start fighting? No need to look at me. You are on the stage, just start, said Xue Wuchang. Lin Feng slightly nodded. The third envoy looked prouder and prouder each second. The third envoy immediately jumped into the air and threw himself at Lin Feng. There was an illusion around his body that looked like an elephant. That third envoy was a member of the Wanxiang sect. He had the 10,000 elephants skill as well, and was releasing a monstrous amount of wild energy. He looked furious, staring at Lin Feng in a bestial way. You will not withstand a single attack. The strength of my 10,000 elephants will crush you. First one. Ridiculous, you piece of shit. A terrifying energy flowed out of his mouth. He was moving towards Lin Feng with the appearance of an elephant. Around him were strong winds making Lin Feng's clothes flutter in the wind. Lin Feng looked like a leaf about to move in the wind. Die! Boom! The strength of 10,000 elephants crashed onto Lin Feng's body. A monstrous wind invaded the entire atmosphere. The crowd already had the impression that they could see Lin Feng crushed under that strength. However, a monstrously loud buzzing sound spread in the air suddenly. The third envoy's body abruptly stopped when it collided against Lin Feng. The strong winds were emitting whistling sounds, but Lin Feng was absolutely immobile, like a mountain. He looked calm and serene looking at the elephant-like third envoy. Boom! The crowd was astonished, especially the middle-aged man of the Wanxiang sect who immediately stood up. His heart was pounding while he watched Lin Feng. What was going on? Huh. The third envoy looked stunned too. He slowly raised his head and looked at Lin Feng. His fists landed on Lin Feng's chest, but Lin Feng was still standing there, looking calm, serene, and peaceful like a deity. That move made the third envoy's heart palpitate violently. He then started quivering with fear. His 10,000 elephants' attack seemed like it had been useless. His heart felt like it was melting at that moment. He was terrified. Chapter 637. One death and one coward. How's that possible? Thought the third envoy. He didn't understand what was going on. Lin Feng had only broken through to the 5th Xianqi layer, but his corporeal body was already so strong. However, the third envoy had broken through to the 6th Xianqi layer, performed an amazing attack. Even someone of the 7th or 8th Xianqi layer would find it difficult to resist his 10,000 elephants attack. Some have already died by that attack. But Lin Feng resisted, not moving a single iota. Like a mountain, he was extremely calm and serene. His corporeal body was way too strong. Lin Feng's strength of the Haruka could rotate 6,000 times. With his body of the Haruka now and his indestructible golden body skill. Besides, he had other powerful skills too. Lin Feng's body was monstrously resistant and solid. He didn't know how strong he was himself, but what he knew was that the third envoy was extremely weak. You are so weak, said Lin Feng calmly while looking at the third envoy. Weak? If I'm a piece of shit, what are you? Asked Lin Feng to the third envoy, who was speechless. He had thought that with his 10,000 elephants skills, he would manage to crush Lin Feng instantly. What would he do now? Lin Feng was a piece of shit, a piece of trash? What about him then? Lin Feng hadn't moved of a single iota after his strongest attack. Being able to participate at the great competition of Xue Yu is an honor, a privilege. Besides, we have the opportunity to receive some treasures from Shengong, which will help us improve our understanding of cultivation, and thus our strength, explained Lin Feng slowly, which puzzled the third envoy. Why was Lin Feng telling him that? Unfortunately, you will not have the chance to enjoy that glory and those privileges. You are too weak and now, so I will kill you, continued Lin Feng slowly, which made the third envoy's heart start pounding violently. Lin Feng was going to kill him. Lin Feng put his hand on the third envoy's shoulder. He wouldn't be able to escape, that hand was way too powerful. Lin Feng's hand became extremely hot as several flames appeared on it. Quickly the third envoy looked terrified as a gigantic fire appeared all around his body. He started burning alive. I will burn you to death. That is what someone with an ice-cold heart like yours deserves, said Lin Feng while slowly pulling his hand away from him. The third envoy started shouting blood-curdling shrieks. He was going to burn to death. He wanted to extinguish the fire, but it didn't work. That fire seemed like it had become a part of his body. It continued burning without interruption. Then, he turned into ashes and disappeared with the wind. Lin Feng had killed him. The crowd was astonished. Lin Feng had burnt the third envoy to death. That battle had been amazing. Boom! A terrifying energy surrounded Lin Feng's body. He slowly turned around and looked at the crowd, more precisely at the middle-aged man from Tianfeng. You dared kill him. Moron, said Lin Feng. Then he turned around and ignored him. He went back to his seat. People from Tianfeng wanted to kill him, but it wasn't so easy. Previously, the strong cultivators from Tianfeng had almost killed him. After that, Lin Feng had promised himself that those people were the first ones he would kill. Now he was just keeping promises. Now that middle-aged man dared get angry at Lin Feng for having killed the third envoy. What a moron. Moron? The strong cultivator of the Wanxiang sect was astonished. He wanted to slaughter Lin Feng. All right. Get ready for the second battle, said Xue Wuchang, pointing at Tang Yuyu. Tang Yuyu jumped forwards and without hesitation, she pointed at the second envoy from Tianfeng. He had the 43rd key. You, said Tang Yuyu. He was astonished and pulled a long face. Tang Yuyu was helping Lin Feng once again. She wanted to kill him. Tang Yuyu wasn't like Lin Feng. Even though she had obtained the second jade key, nobody was surprised because she had broken through to the very top of the 7th Xianqi layer. The second envoy or even Ye Yun would have no chance against her. The middle-aged man of Tianfeng was speechless and furious. The second envoy was going to die. It was that simple. From the 7 envoys, only one would be left? Ye Yun? Tang Yuyu was Lin Feng's friend, so she wouldn't let them off. Are you proud? Said Lin Feng while looking at the middle-aged man. Lin Feng found Tang Yuyu adorable. If you are scared, you can give up, but you must give up all the treasures, said Xue Wuchang when he saw that the second envoy was terrified. If he fought, he would lose everything and he would be humiliated. But if Tang Yuyu wanted to kill him, he would probably die there. His thoughts were chaotic at that moment, and after a while he decided, I give up. He looked extremely weak and terrified. Being able to participate at the great competition of Xue Yu was an honor. It would have been prestigious to go back to Tianfeng and brag about it, but now he had given up. He wouldn't be able to tell anyone about the battles of the competition, because he had been too scared and had given up. He wouldn't enjoy the glory of having participated. Coward, piss off then, said Xue Wuchang despisingly. He had managed to make it so far and was now giving up. Such people were cowards. When the second envoy heard Xue Wuchang, he was astonished. The old man despised him, and everybody else did. What a horrible humiliation. He then started walking away and left. Lin Feng looked at the second envoy in a calm and serene way. The second envoy had acted so aggressively and arrogantly before, but now he was giving up so easily. Tang Yuyu moved back next to Lin Feng. During the first battle, one of them had died. And the second battle had never taken place because a coward had given up. People were really surprised. The third battle was extremely fast. Di Ling had crushed his opponent in one punch. All the battles of the 8 most outstanding geniuses of Xue Yu were that way. They could easily crush the weakest ones. Lin Feng paid particular attention to Yu Tianming and Wu Qing, who won though. Those two people had broken through to the very top of the 6th Xianqi layer and were about to break through to the 7th. They had all become much stronger since they left for Dragon Mountain. Yu Qingshan and Tung Wu Yao felt gratified and were smiling resplendently. Once in a while, they were glancing back to the other as if they had been battling too. Yu Qingshan was finally convinced that Yu Tianming was stronger than Wu Qing. His grandson would also surpass him. He would only need a few years. But Tung Wu Qing was also convinced that Wu Qing was as strong as Yu Tianming, and would soon become stronger than him. Lin Feng didn't care about those things. He knew that Yu Tianming and Wu Qing would lose against him at some point. The one who had obtained the 28th Jade Key challenged Yun Fei Yang. Lin Feng glanced at him. The one who had the 28th Jade Key had broken through to the 7th Xianqi layer. Many people had died during the first rounds, but he had survived. In Shuiyu, a cultivator of the 7th Xianqi layer was already considered strong. However, at the competition, he had only managed to obtain the 28th key and everybody was extremely young here. Yunfei Yang had broken through to the 6th Xianqi layer after the first round in the evil area. He had probably obtained some incredible treasure that had helped him. Yunfei Yang might surprise everyone once again. He took out a flask of alcohol and downed it. Then he walked towards the middle of the fighting stage sluggishly. Chapter 638. Cosmic Force. The opponent was surprised when he saw how sluggish Yunfei Yang looked. It seemed like Yunfei Yang was acting different. He wasn't like those who had obtained the last jade keys. They usually looked weak and scared. They lacked self-confidence. However, Yunfei Yang was different. His eyes were twinkling. He looked calm and unperturbed, almost peaceful. He had ranked 50th this time and didn't look scared at all. He just looked calm and unrestrained. The opponent looked at Yunfei Yang in a strange way and said, "I am stronger than you by 1 cultivation layer and during the second round I finished 28th. You will not have a single chance of touching me if we fight. I suggest you give up." The opponent was trying to discourage him. He didn't want to fight. The great competition of Shuiyu was getting more and more complicated, so not fighting was a good way of reserving strength and energy. "Why are you not giving up then?" asked Yunfei Yang. The other was stupefied. "My cultivation level is higher than yours. Why would I give up?" "The cultivation level doesn't necessarily mean everything," said Yunfei Yang indifferently. Immediately after, he jumped forwards and the atmosphere started shaking. "What's going on?" The crowd was astonished. Their hearts started palpitating. Things looked dangerous. Yunfei Yang's opponent was astonished too. His heart was shaking at the same pace as Yunfei Yang's steps. The sensation was becoming more and more intense. The cultivation level is only one aspect of your actual strength. Physical strength is also important, said Yunfei Yang. Then he started running. His feet were bombarding the floor of the fighting stage. Some qi emerged out of his body. It seemed like lights were appearing all around. At the same time, some qi moved towards his opponent. The force of the planet is amazing. When practicing cultivation, you can condense force, borrow it from the earth to perform energy attacks. Your kind of force is only a little help, said Yunfei Yang slowly. He then slowed down too. He was using his feet and force to make the opponent's entire body shake violently. The opponent felt extremely oppressed. Yunfei Yang's voice was resonating in people's brains and hearts. Everybody's hearts were beating faster and faster. Yunfei Yang's qi was gaining in intensity. There were massive amounts of forces all around him. Lin Feng was watching Yunfei Yang. Now he looked much stronger than the last time in Dragon Mountain. Yunfei Yang's qi was becoming terrifying. It seemed like it was becoming a person in itself. Force can be very beneficial. Enough so to make the difference, said Yunfei Yang. He had a very deep understanding of cultivation. Yunfei Yang was facing an extremely strong cultivator. That opponent didn't feel like fighting anymore. It seemed like his confidence and determination had been crushed. His heart kept pounding, so loudly that he could even hear his own heartbeat mixed in with Yunfei Yang's voice. Force is an aspect of cultivation. It belongs to the planet. One's own body, strength, etc. can become force, and then it can turn into the abstruse significance, continued Yunfei Yang. The abstruse significance was the step after level 9 intent. Everybody knew about that. Yunfei Yang was able to explain intent and the abstruse significance quite well. Shui Wuchang looked surprised. Sharp lights were twinkling in his eyes. He was fixated on Yunfei Yang. What a real genius, thought Shui Wuchang at that moment. Yunfei Yang was surprising. Yunfei Yang's words helped everybody understand those concepts better. However, they knew that being able to walk in perfect cadence with those forces was extremely hard. It was terrifying. He was in perfect harmony with cosmic waves. Yunfei Yang had reached such a deep level of understanding. He was indeed very talented. As expected, there are real geniuses here, thought Shui Wuchang, smiling. Yunfei Yang had to keep living. People like him were extremely rare. Everyone's opinions were changing. They didn't think that Yunfei Yang was going to lose anymore. He looked like a winner, even if his cultivation level was lower than that of his opponent. Of course, force has limits and people's strength too. However, on the great path of cultivation, There are might not be limits. Boom! Yunfei Yang's step made the entire atmosphere in everyone's hearts shake. Even though Yunfei Yang had only stepped on the floor very lightly. Each time Yunfei Yang walks there is force. He tries to understand it better with each step. At that moment his force was becoming more and more intense. There were even some strong winds surrounding around him. Yunfei Yang's opponent was already in the middle of those winds. Therefore strength is good, but it doesn't mean everything. Some other factors can influence your cultivation. Finished Yunfei Yang. The cadence of his steps was becoming more and more intense. Boom! Everyone was hypnotized by Yunfei Yang's steps. Each time he walked their body would start shaking. This time Yunfei Yang didn't stop. The atmosphere was shaking more and more violently. It seemed like it was going to explode. Everywhere there was only his force. Suddenly, the cultivator of the 7th Qian-Qi layer was projected away in the air. Blood was splashing out of his mouth. He then crashed onto the ground with a muffled sound. The crowd was fixedly staring at that cultivator of the 7th Qian-Qi layer. He had lost. Yunfei Yang had broken through to the 6th Qian-Qi layer. But with those steps he made his opponent fly away in defeat. He had only needed a few very simple steps to make everybody's hearts pound, nothing else. Nobody would ever forget Yunfei Yang. That move had been too astonishing. Yunfei Yang looked calm and serene just like a moment before. Nobody knew what he was thinking, but he didn't look arrogant at all. He didn't try to humiliate his opponent or anything, he just asked, "Do you want to continue the battle?" That person was crawling on the floor, with his blood flowing out of his mouth. He shook his head and said, "No need, you won. That was a very good battle and a great victory for you. I really need to practice more. Thank you for what you taught me." "Don't worry. I'm off," said Yunfei Yang, nodding and then moving back to his original place. "What a mysterious and enigmatic guy," said Lin Feng while smiling. He was really astonished. Lin Feng also wanted to understand the concept of force even more. Lin Feng wanted to understand that cadence and harmony between Yunfei Yang's steps and the cosmic waves. Everybody was staring at Yunfei Yang in a different way. That guy was an authentic genius. "Am I mysterious?" said Yunfei Yang while shrugging and smiling. Yunfei Yang had won the battle. Even though his key was one of the last ones, he had proved to everybody that it didn't mean anything. His victory had been dazzling. Chapter 639. Astonishing choice against all expectations. The following battles were extremely equitable, because they were in the middle of the rankings. The battles were very interesting to watch. All sorts of people were winning and losing from the middle of the rankings as well as from the bottom. In the end, 32 battles finished. 64 people had fought, 32 had been eliminated. Those who had been eliminated were extremely disappointed, but they knew that it was because they weren't strong enough. Of course, they were still alive, so there was still some hope. Amongst the 32 people who had been eliminated, 2 had died and 1 had escaped. There was no hope for them anymore. Fighting had taught the losers a lot. They had understood why strong cultivators were strong, what made them strong. They had lost, but Shengong would still honor their presence. That mysterious Shengong would probably grant people with incredible treasures which would help them increase their cultivation level. That's what the losers were hoping for. Of course, thinking that way was also a way of comforting themselves for having lost. After all, they had already been eliminated. Their dream of making it to the last battles had disappeared. Xue Wuchang looked at the geniuses, slightly smiled and said, "Have a rest for 12 hours and get ready for the next series of battles." The second series of battles would be everybody's second. Most people in the crowd closed their eyes or practiced some skills when they heard him. They either practiced cultivation, or were waiting for their pure qi stocks to be filled up again. Others' silhouettes flickered and they landed in the middle of the common crowd to talk to people from their clans or sections. They were consulting their relatives to seek advice about who they should challenge for the next battle. Lin Feng and his friends surprisingly sat down and kept drinking. They looked quite relaxed. Lin Feng looked at Yunfei Yang, smiled and said, "Yunfei Yang, tell me, are you not hiding your real cultivation level?" Yunfei Yang seemed like he had some secrets. The first time Lin Feng had met him, he had only broken through to the 4th Qian-Qi layer. But then he had very quickly broken through to the 5th Qian-Qi layer. However, during the first round in the evil area, He had already broken through to the 6th Xianqi layer. He was becoming stronger and stronger, extremely fast, too fast to be true. Lin Feng was even more intrigued because Yun Fei Yang had an extremely high power of understanding and monstrous strength, but he had ranked 50th during the second round. How strange. He only obtained the 50th key. Lin Feng didn't believe that Yun Fei Yang had only broken through to the 6th Xianqi layer. He believed that his cultivation level was even higher than that. Yes, said Yun Fei Yang. I can't see it, but I have the feeling that you're much stronger, said Lin Feng, looking over to Jun Emoshi and Tang Yuyu. I don't know, said Tang Yuyu. Jun Emoshi's eyes were twinkling. He was looking at Yun Fei Yang in a strange way. Yun Fei Yang and Lin Feng were very similar. They looked insignificant, calm, not arrogant, serene. They didn't draw people's attention too much, but in fact, each time they fought they were astonishing. You are both so evil, joked Jun Emoshi. It seemed like he agreed with Lin Feng about Yun Fei Yang. However, Jun Emoshi also had doubts when it came to Lin Feng. He doubted that Lin Feng was showing his full strength. What does that have to do with me? Teased Lin Feng. Indeed, it has nothing to do with you. You've only broken through to the 5th Xianqi layer, but you obtained the first jade key. You finished even before those cultivators of the 8th and 9th Xianqi layer, whispered Jun Emoshi. Lin Feng smiled from the corner of his mouth. He liked to tease his friends too. Half a day passed very quickly. All right, it's time to continue, said Xue Wuchang. Everybody suddenly looked solemn and serious. They all moved to the flood dragon statue again. They were psychologically preparing themselves. It was about to start again. From those 32 people, only 16 would be left after this series of battles. Those 16 people would be able to continue. After those 16 people's battles, there would only be 8 left. Then the top 10 would appear, and more particularly the top 8. The most dazzling young people of the great competition of Xue Yu would finally be recognized. Being one of the 8 most dazzling cultivators of the competition would be an extreme glory and honor for them. They would go back to their country, one of the 13 countries of Xue Yu, and would be recognized as incredible cultivators. At the same time, the competition was a great way to become stronger. After competing, their cultivation level would be much higher. It would increase their self-confidence, determination, and willpower. Of course, it wasn't over yet, so it was useless to dream about those things. First, they had to win their next 2 battles, which wouldn't be that easy at all. Apart from Lin Feng and Yun Fei Yang and another cultivator of the 6th Xianqi layer, all the others had broken at least through to the 7th Xianqi layer at least. Apart from strength and abilities, luck also played a role. For some people, being able to choose their opponents was really a great luck. Lin Feng, it's your turn, said Xue Wuchang. Lin Feng was, after all, the first of them. Lin Feng slightly nodded and jumped forwards. He was facing 31 extremely strong cultivators. Who was he going to choose this time? Yun Fei Yang was the weakest of all, but he was monstrously strong. On top of that, he was Lin Feng's good friend, so they couldn't choose each other. Apart from Yun Fei Yang, there was only one other person of the 6th Xianqi layer. Everybody looked at that person. Lin Feng had to choose him if he wanted to win. That cultivator felt tense when he sensed that everybody was looking at him. He had lots of pressure at that moment. Well, fighting against him would be my best option, thought that person. Apart from Lin Feng, the next ones would all be terrifying. Maybe the best option was to be chosen by Lin Feng. Lin Feng looked at him too, his eyes were twinkling. That person then said, "Let's fight." A terrifying battle energy then rose up in the air. However, what astonished him was that Lin Feng wasn't looking at him anymore. Lin Feng wasn't going to choose him? That person of the 6th Xianqi layer was scared again. If Lin Feng didn't choose him, that person would lose for sure. He felt like he had been eliminated already, completely dispirited. The crowd was also astonished to see that Lin Feng wasn't choosing him. He had broken through to the 6th Xianqi layer, so he was the best choice. Lin Feng was the first one to choose, so that was also a great opportunity for him, but it seemed like he wasn't going to use it. Lin Feng then slowly turned his head and looked at Nie Yun, then at Wu Qing. Lin Feng looked hesitant. Is Lin Feng scared to fight? Thought the crowd. Lin Feng seemed so irresolute. Some things need to be sorted, thought Lin Feng. Immediately after, he looked at Yu Tianming. Yu Tianming was speechless when he saw that Lin Feng was looking at him. Was he going to choose him? Lin Feng had no reason to choose him though. Come here, said Lin Feng indifferently. Yu Tianming was astonished. Lin Feng was really looking at him and was really choosing him. He didn't understand why though. He had broken through to the 7th Xianqi layer and there were others that were much weaker than him. He had never had a conflict with him. Why was he choosing him? Yu Tianming wasn't the only one who was astonished. Everybody else was, including Yu Qingshan. Why was that Lin Feng challenging Yu Tianming? Losing now would mean the end of his dazzling cultivation career. Let's fight, shouted Yu Tianming furiously. He then released some monstrous pure qi. He was using all the strength of the 7th Xianqi layer without controlling himself. He was using all his strength. Boom! His pure qi seemed like it was going to explode. Yu Tianming's hands were emitting whistling sounds and moving towards Lin Feng at full speed. But at that moment Lin Feng looked calm and serene. He just moved like the wind, looking natural, free and unperturbed. Lin Feng opened his mouth and started chanting some mantra in Sanskrit. It seemed like his mantras were thousands of years old. Magnificent golden Sanskrit letters appeared in the air after each word. There was a golden aura around Lin Feng's body. That golden aura was dazzling. He looked like a Shakyamuni Buddha, pure and holy, illuminating the world with his wisdom. What's that skill? The crowd wondered. Watch Lin Feng. He was finally using a real skill. Lin Feng then abruptly stopped. He looked like a statue. Buzz! Yu Tianming's hands landed on Lin Feng, and the sound of a bell spread in the air. Lin Feng, with his indestructible golden body, hadn't moved of a single iota, just like a mountain. That's Lin Feng's authentic strength. The crowd was shivering. His Shakyamuni body was incredible. His body had turned into a real Buddha statue. Yu Tianming had broken through to the 7th Xianqi layer. But just like Lin Feng's previous battle, he hadn't moved a single iota. Yu Tianming was astonished. He had the feeling that his hands had crashed onto an indestructible statue. Yu Qingshan was astonished. Was that Lin Feng? That cultivator of the 5th Xianqi layer had turned into a Buddha statue, and had felt nothing from Yu Tianming's attack. Die! Yu Tianming released some more pure qi, and continued bombarding Lin Feng's body. The golden light was breaking apart bit by bit. But would it break? Lin Feng was looking at Yu Tianming unperturbed. He then said, "You will have no opportunity to hurt me. In front of me you are a tiny little insect, you are a coward, you are absolutely incompetent. You can only look up at me," said Lin Feng calmly. Yu Tianming was astonished. He had very high natural abilities and had put so much effort into his cultivation. He had never stopped becoming stronger because he had always hoped to become one of the 4 best cultivators of Shuiyu. He wanted to dazzle. Yu Tianming had managed to become one of the 8 high officials of Shuiyu. He was respected and admired by everyone. For the Yu clan, Yu Tianming was a treasure. Now, he was standing on the fighting stage at the great competition of Shuiyu. He wanted to go back to Shuiyu as a glorious cultivator. He wanted to show to his aunt that apart from her, there was another genius in the Yu clan. But Lin Feng, with his Buddha body, was despising him and calling him an insect. Yu Tianming didn't want to admit it, but his pure qi had reached its limits. He couldn't do anything against Lin Feng, he couldn't injure him. Therefore Yu Tianming realized that even with his best skills, all he would be able to do would be to make Lin Feng's body shake a little bit. Breaking Lin Feng's body would be too difficult. Yu Tianming couldn't break Lin Feng's body, so how would he be able to defeat him? He started to get dispirited. His self-confidence was disappearing. "Tianming, don't give up!" shouted Yu Qingshan furiously when he saw that Yu Tianming was starting to look dispirited. Yu Tianming shivered and raised his head. He suddenly looked furious and tough again. "Erf!" In Yu Tianming's back appeared his celestial fang spirit. There were 6 dragon heads on it, and those heads were looking at Lin Feng in a despising manner. "Die!" shouted Yu Tianming furiously. The 6 heads showed their teeth and moved towards Lin Feng. Golden hands. Lin Feng's golden Sanskrit letters turned into a gigantic hand and moved towards the dragon, bombarding the atmosphere. "Roar!" The celestial fang spirit roared and was projected backwards. Lin Feng looked at Yu Tianming again. In the same despising way he said, I told you, you are a tiny little insect in front of me, nothing more. You have no chance to win. The crowd was shaking. Lin Feng was really terrifying. Yu Tianming had broken through to the 7th Xianqi layer but couldn't do anything against him. Lin Feng had obtained the first jade key. Was it really only due to luck? Besides, Lin Feng was deliberately playing around with Yu Tianming, trying to crush his self-confidence. Yu Tianming was going crazy. Was he really only a little insect? He had managed to make it to the great competition of Shuiyu. That was an incredible honor, a glorious thing. But now Lin Feng was going to crush him, his heart, and his self-confidence. Chapter 641. Prove what? Yu Tianming hadn't used his entire strength yet, but he didn't feel like using it anymore. Since the beginning of the battle, Lin Feng had been crushing his mood. All of his attacks were useless. Lin Feng was just staring at him, humiliating him, making fun of him. Tianming, don't give up. You have to stay proud even if you lose. You are at the great competition of Shuiyu. Losing a fight is not a disaster, it's normal, shouted Yu Qingshan. He knew what Lin Feng was doing. He could see everything. For a cultivator, losing one's courage, honor and dignity were the worst things. If a cultivator's heart was destroyed, he wouldn't be able to continue becoming stronger. Why was Lin Feng doing that? Did he hate Yu Tianming? Why was he so cruel to him? Yu Qingshan didn't understand. His thoughts were chaotic. It was the first time that he felt so confused even though he was quite old. Yu Tianming was the treasure of the Yu clan. Yu Qingshan had faith in him. With all the efforts Yu Tianming had made in the past, he couldn't lose his motivation. Yu Qingshan's voice resonated and detonated in Yu Tianming's brain. He immediately roared violently and his terrifying celestial fang spirit appeared again. Yu Tianming's blood seemed like it was boiling. He couldn't submit himself. He had thrived for victory. The strength of his blood spirit kept flowing at full speed. Yu Tianming was roaring like an animal. His hair was violently fluttering in the wind. He grabbed Lin Feng's body and created fissures in the statue. Yu Tianming was finally managing to break Lin Feng's body. Break! Yu Tianming was surprised and immediately delighted. Finally. But Lin Feng said something else at that moment. The only way for you to crack my golden body is to use your full strength. For the first disciple of the Yu clan and second high official of Shuiyu, that's ridiculous. You're a real piece of trash, joked Lin Feng. Yu Tianming couldn't do anything against Lin Feng, who was unknown. Ridiculous. It's only a fissure. Why are you so happy? Do you think that's enough to defeat me? Do you think you can be proud of yourself now? You're less than trash, said Lin Feng. Finally, Lin Feng attacked and his golden hand crashed onto Yu Tianming's body. It seemed like it was going to crush him. Blood splashed and Yu Tianming's body flew away. He couldn't even withstand a single attack. Lin Feng jumped and landed in front of Yu Tianming. He looked down at him and said indifferently, "Do you feel proud?" Boom! Another golden hand appeared. Yu Tianming raised his hand and just heard his bones break. Crackling sounds could be heard by the audience. Yu Tianming couldn't stand up. He was left on the ground. Yu Tianming raised his head. His eyes were bloodshot. He was fixated on Lin Feng. He had the impression that he was going to go crazy. And now? Are you still proud to be the second high official of Shuiyu? Said Lin Feng. Yu Tianming looked furious. His hair was extremely messy. That's enough. Why do you hate him so much and have to be that cruel? Shouted Yu Qingshan furiously. Yu Qingshan was glaring at Lin Feng. They didn't know each other and initially Lin Feng even looked warm and gentle. Why was he so cruel at that moment? Why was he humiliating him so much? Lin Feng turned around and looked at Yu Qingshan with a cold smile on his face. Why? Because of you, Yu Qingshan. Me? Yu Qingshan was astonished. I don't understand. How did I offend you? Oh, I see, said Lin Feng smiling, but it wasn't a happy smile. It wasn't pride either. It was a mockery. The situation was ridiculous. When you confronted your grandson, were you sad? What about my mother? What about my father? And what about me? Grandpa. Grandpa. Lin Feng had called him Grandpa. Yu Qingshan's heart pounded violently. Yu Qingshan wasn't the only one. Yu Tianming was also shaken. Lin Feng was calling him Grandpa. The crowd was also astonished that old man was his grandpa, Lin Feng. Yu Qingshan was astonished it was really him, it was the real Lin Feng. Unfortunately, his grandson was proudly standing on the fighting stage at the great competition of Shuiyu. He had obtained the first jade key, but his grandfather didn't benefit from that glory. He was just astonished. Words couldn't describe those feelings. It was Lin Feng, the real Lin Feng. Yu Qingshan looked extremely sad. So it was you, it's me, said Lin Feng, nodding. Some flames were burning in his eyes. In a flash his face changed. He didn't look sick anymore, but his eyes looked just as resplendent as before. He was an outstanding young man. Lin Feng looked even younger than the sick Lin Feng. He had just been wearing a mask. At that moment many silhouettes stood up. The people from Tianfeng, from the Wanshou sect, from the Yu clan, they all stood up. They were staring at him. They were starting to understand the situation a little better. The Yu clan understood why Lin Feng had killed Yu Jian and Yu Qin. The people from Tianfeng also knew why Lin Feng had been killing them one after the other. Lin Feng hadn't died, he was still alive. It's him. Wu Qing couldn't take his eyes away from Lin Feng. Lin Feng had become so strong, Wu Qing was starting to get scared. Besides, Lin Feng would try to exterminate the Wanshou sect if he remained alive. Wu Qing's heart started pounding. He felt terrified. If Lin Feng became stronger, he would kill them all. It's him. The people from Dragon Mountain were astonished too. Lin Feng hadn't died. He had disappeared but reappeared with a new face. Yu Qingshan was looking at the young man. He looked dazzling, clean, handsome. He didn't look furious, he just looked alive. Was everything Yu Qingshan's fault? He had always taken care of Yu Tianming, and had hoped that Yu Tianming would become a dragon amongst people. But he had expelled his own daughter from the clan, and her husband and her son. Lin Feng and his father hadn't been able to live or come back to the imperial city. They had had to live in a small town. Lin Feng had come back to Shuiyu, and Yu Qingshan had hoped that Yu Tianming would crush Lin Feng. He had even tried to make Yu Tianming steal Lin Feng's girlfriend, Duan Xianyi. He had told Yu Tianming to attack Lin Feng in front of everybody. Only a part of his dream was realized. Yu Tianming and Lin Feng were fighting during the competition. But the problem was the winner wasn't Yu Tianming. The result was astonishing. His grandson, Yu Tianming, had been humiliated and crushed by Lin Feng, who only counted on himself. Lin Feng could easily kill Yu Tianming if he wished. For him, Yu Tianming really was a tiny little insect. Ridiculous, sad, tragic. That was only the beginning. Why are you doing that? Asked Yu Qingshan. To prove something to everybody. You said in the past that you hoped that Yu Tianming would defeat me in front of everybody at the competition. Now I have proven that my determination was stronger. I proved you that your grandson is not extraordinary. That your other grandson, who's your daughter's son, can accomplish great things. I want to be a source of pride for my mother, and I want to prove to everyone that she didn't make a mistake when she left the Yu clan, said Lin Feng slowly. His speech had made Yu Qingshan's heart twitch. Chapter 642. One attack to prove in front of everyone that Yu Qingshan was wrong. To prove that my mother, Yu Menghe, was right. Yu Qingshan was speechless. Was Lin Feng wrong? He was right, Lin Feng was entirely right. Everything was Yu Qingshan's fault. He had supported Yu Tianming to put pressure on Lin Feng. He had even encouraged him to attack and offend Lin Feng. Yu Qingshan had done that even though Yu Tianming and Lin Feng should have been raised like brothers. Lin Feng and Yu Tianming were both extremely gifted. They could have been much stronger if they had grown up together. They could have supported each other on the path of cultivation. But in the end, nothing had happened that way because of Yu Qingshan. Yu Qingshan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He had really made a lot of mistakes. Kill me, said Yu Tianming. He was lying on the ground. He felt desperate and hopeless. Lin Feng had just crushed his entire life. He had always dreamt of defeating Lin Feng, and in the end, Lin Feng had stepped on and crushed his integrity. Lin Feng lowered his head and looked at Yu Tianming indifferently. Kill him? We have the same blood. Even though I don't consider you as a brother, I cannot violate that blood relation. I have to respect your parents and my parents, so I will not kill you, said Lin Feng indifferently. Yu Tianming would live on despite the anger. That was also an endless humiliation for Yu Tianming because it meant that Lin Feng controlled his entire life, only because of a blood relation. Lin Feng turned around and looked at Wu Qing. Coward. You won't live much longer. If you don't die this turn, you will be my next opponent and your life will be mine, said Lin Feng indifferently. Wu Qing was scared. Lin Feng was going to kill him. Besides, Lin Feng could really kill him now, he was strong enough. Yu Tianming had broken through to the 7th Xianqi layer and Lin Feng could easily defeat cultivators of the 7th Xianqi layer. Even if he had been stronger than Yu Tianming, he still wouldn't have been able to defeat Lin Feng. Wu Qing had always wanted to kill Lin Feng, but now Lin Feng had the power and strength to kill him. And you, said Lin Feng, looking at Nie Yun. He wouldn't let any of them off. People from Tianfeng were his enemies. Nie Yun was just as speechless. He was the first envoy of Tianfeng and he was afraid because Lin Feng had glanced at him only once. After threatening those few people, Lin Feng slowly turned around and looked at the crowd. People from Tianfeng, the Yu clan and the Wanshou sect. Lin Feng looked at each and every single one of them. I know that you all want to kill me and that you are all surprised. I changed my face because of you. You have always tried to humiliate me, always insulted and always tried to kill me. But I am still alive and now I am not scared of you anymore. Now I can tell you I am alive and if I don't die you will, said Lin Feng indifferently. Those people were all speechless. Lin Feng hated them deeply and bitterly. They all perfectly knew how Lin Feng felt. They wanted to kill him but he also wanted to kill them. If Lin Feng remained alive, he would definitely win. You will die here during the great competition of Shuiyu anyways, said the middle-aged man from Tianfeng coldly. Of course if you don't die, I will personally kill you. Do you think that with your ridiculous strength you will manage to kill me? Said Lin Feng indifferently yet mockingly. That person had broken through to the 8th Xianqi layer. Lin Feng could easily kill people of the 7th Xianqi layer. Soon Lin Feng would also be able to easily defeat cultivators of the 8th Xianqi layer. Besides, Xue Wuchang had previously told Lin Feng that obtaining the first jade key would provide him with incredible benefits. Lin Feng had to cherish that opportunity. After the competition he would never have to be afraid of a cultivator of the 8th Xianqi layer ever again. That cultivator of the 8th Xianqi layer was astonished staring at Lin Feng. Indeed, after the competition he wouldn't be able to compete with Lin Feng anymore. Lin Feng was becoming stronger and stronger, and at an incredible speed. You won't have any opportunity. You will die on the fighting stage of the competition, said a cold voice. Lin Feng turned around and saw Shueisha. He wanted to kill Lin Feng and was releasing an evil qi. Indeed, you will die here, said Umo. Those two had surprised everyone. Such strong cultivators wanted to kill Lin Feng. Some people in the crowd laughed when they saw that Umo and Shueisha wanted to kill him. Indeed, Lin Feng was definitely going to die there with them. Shueisha and Umo wanted to kill him, would he die? Lin Feng was definitely going to die. If we ever fight, yes, said Lin Feng mockingly. He had the first jade key. He would be able to choose his opponents the entire time. Humph. The two others groaned coldly while staring at Lin Feng. Lin Feng moved back to his original position. He had wasted too much time and Xue Wuchang hadn't made any reproach. Lin Feng couldn't exaggerate either. Tang Yuyu was looking at Lin Feng coming back towards her. She then looked at him and said, I can kill one of them for you, which should I kill? Tang Yuyu was pointing at Nie Yun, the first envoy of Tianfeng, and Wu Qing of the Wanshou sect. Nie Yun and Wu Qing were astonished. They had forgotten that Tang Yuyu was his friend. Don't worry, you can kill one and I will kill the other one, said Junemoshi. Wu Qing and Nie Yun were even more furious. Tang Yuyu and Junemoshi wanted to kill them? The competition is getting more and more interesting. It will have to end soon, thought the crowd laughing. A moment before, Umo and Shueisha had threatened to kill Lin Feng. But now Tang Yuyu and Junemoshi were proposing to help Lin Feng. After that series of battles there would be 16 people left. Those remaining would be authentically strong cultivators, the Titans. Just choose one as you wish. Give him the strongest ones, said Lin Feng to Tang Yuyu while laughing. He was telling her to leave the strongest opponent for Junemoshi. Tang Yuyu and Junemoshi wanted to help him. he was happy about and wasn't going to refuse. Jun Emoshi laughed. Lin Feng really knew how to talk to beautiful women, surprisingly telling Tang Yuyu to choose the easy opponents. Yu said Tang Yuyu to Nie Yun, which made him feel tense. He still came out and faced her. It was much better than fighting against Jun Emoshi. After all, Tang Yuyu had only broken through to the very top of the 7th Xianqi layer. She wasn't as strong as the 8 most dazzling geniuses of the competition. When Tang Yuyu saw that Nie Yun was coming, she immediately attacked. Her face was filled with murder. "Killing me won't be that easy," shouted Nie Yun furiously. The chi of his spirit then invaded the atmosphere. Nie Yun was about to release his spirit. He was immediately going to deploy his entire strength. "Really?" said Tang Yuyu coldly. She then immediately disappeared from her initial position, and a hand appeared on Nie Yun's shoulder. Huh. The crowd was stupefied. What was happening? In the blink of an eye she had appeared on his side. How was that possible? Then her hand crashed onto Nie Yun's head. What? How's that possible? Nie Yun asked as he slowly collapsed. At the same time, like a celestial being, Tang Yuyu moved back and landed next to Lin Feng. She had killed Nie Yun in one simple attack. From that moment, the 7 envoys of Tianfeng were dead. All of them had died. Chapter 643. The 16 best. The people from the Wanxian sect who had just sat back down stood up again. The imperial tutor also stood up. Nie Yun was dead. Tang Yuyu had killed Nie Yun in one single and simple attack. How horrible. Last time, Feng Chan and the envoys had died in Shuiyu. This time, all the new 7 envoys had died again. Joining the great competition of Shuiyu was supposed to be an honor, a glory for them, but now they had lost all their fighters. The 7 envoys were all dead. What a humiliation. Everything was because of Lin Feng. Almost all of their most outstanding fighters had died. That night when Lin Feng had almost died, he had killed all of them cruelly. If they had managed to kill Lin Feng, it would have been worth it, but Lin Feng was still alive. The consequences were terrible for Tianfeng. He must die. They were all furious. They all wanted to kill Lin Feng. Put the corpse away, demanded Shui Wuchang, glancing at the middle-aged man and the imperial tutor. The middle-aged man then moved to Nie Yun, grabbed his body and pulled it to the side. Then Shui Wuchang looked at Di Ling. It was his turn. Di Ling jumped forwards and arrived in the middle of the fighting stage. Di Ling then looked at someone. Nobody was surprised. "Come," said Di Ling indifferently. That person raised his head and looked furious. He was insulting Di Ling in his heart. Even though he had broken through to the 7th Xianqi layer, he couldn't rival with Di Ling. The result of the battle was obvious. As expected, Di Ling defeated him in one punch, crushing all his bones. Di Ling let him off though and didn't kill him. Duan Wudao's battle was the same. One punch and he defeated his opponent. The 5th one was Jun Emoshi. Of course, when Jun Emoshi came out, Wu Qing and the people of the Wanshou sect were terrified. They hadn't forgotten what he told Lin Feng. Tang Yuyu and Jun Emoshi were going to kill Lin Feng's enemies. Tang Yuyu had already killed Nie Yun, so Jun Emoshi was going to kill Wu Qing. As expected, Jun Emoshi looked at Wu Qing, which made his face turn deathly pale. Was he going to try and run away like the second envoy? It would be normal if he decided to run away. He couldn't compete with Jun Emoshi. He wouldn't even have the opportunity to hit him once. Jun Emoshi and Tang Yuyu were the same. With one punch they could kill people. But if he gave up, he wouldn't benefit from the treasures of Shengong. Nobody knew that during the first round of the competition, he had already acted like a coward. He hadn't obtained precious treasures in the evil area because he hadn't gone and hunted people. He only tried to survive and stay hidden the whole time. This time he wouldn't be able to hide away. Tung Wuyao looked as ugly as Wu Qing at that moment. Why? All of this was because of Lin Feng. Jun Emoshi was going to kill him because of Lin Feng, otherwise he wouldn't had the idea to pick him. "Give up," said Tung Wuyao, looking like a coward. There was no chance. If Wu Qing fought, he would die. Jun Emoshi was one of the 8 most outstanding disciples. If he hadn't been one of them, maybe then Tung Wuyao would have allowed Wu Qing to fight. Wu Qing was shaking. He glanced at Lin Feng and said, "I forfeit." Then he left and moved into the crowd with the people from the Wanshou sect. The competition had nothing to do with him anymore, but Wu Qing still hoped to see Lin Feng die during the competition. The 6th person was Xue Sha, he won. The 7th one was Umo, he won. The 8th one was Qi Qingjian Ling Xiao, he won. The 9th one was Ling Xiao Xiao, she won. The 10th one was Ku Yao Tong the Dead Tree, he won. The 11th one was Qingming Xian, she won. The 12th one was someone with a silver sword on his back. He fought against another sword cultivator. And the person he challenged was Jianshen. Their battle was terrifying. Just like Lin Feng had anticipated. Jianshen understood sword intent. Unfortunately, the challenger also understood sword intent. In terms of sword intent, they were both level 1. Besides, the challenger was extremely strong. He had broken through to the top of the 7th Xianqi layer. Ultimately, Jianshen was eliminated. How unfortunate. The 13th person was a girl with an Ice Soul skill. That Ice Soul skill was monstrously powerful. Everybody had had the impression that they were going to freeze standing during her battle. She had challenged Leng Shui from Dragon Mountain. Leng Shui had lost after a few attacks. The 14th person had a monstrous strength and a body like steel. He challenged someone with a black left hand, Cui Wu Ming. In the end, Cui Wu Ming had lost. In terms of strength, the challenger had been stronger. The 15th challenger had won, no exception and no surprises. But the 16th person had had no choice. The only person left to challenge was Yun Fei Yang. Yun Fei Yang was an exception. Usually, such a thing never happened at the great competition of Shuiyu. Yun Fei Yang had finished 50th during the second round, but had defeated the 16th cultivator during the second round. Dragon Mountain had 6 people left. Lin Feng, Tang Yuyu, Duan Wu Dao, Junen Moshi, Qingming Xian and Yun Fei Yang. That was exceptional. The 3 other empires together only had 10 left. One more round and the competition would finish. Many were impatient to see the last battles. The last 16 people were all monstrously strong. The clash of titans would start. Apart from Lin Feng and Yun Fei Yang, all those people had broken at least through to the 7th Xianqi layer. However, Lin Feng and Yun Fei Yang were extremely strong. Many wished that they wouldn't have to fight against them. Lin Feng had scared everybody when he had defeated Yu Tianming. Yun Fei Yang was also able to easily defeat cultivators of the 7th Xianqi layer. Now there were 16 people left. There were no weaklings, only extremely strong young cultivators. Have a rest for 1 hour, said Xue Wuchang. He was giving them 1 hour to retrieve some pure qi. Now the atmosphere was particularly silent. Many people were anxious or afraid to distract the 16 geniuses. Lin Feng took out a small round thing. Then he looked up at Junen Moshi and Tang Yuyu and asked, "Who do you want to fight?" "I don't know." Lin Feng rubbed his hands together. All the people left were extremely strong and had all broken through to at least the very top of the 7th Xianqi layer. Same, said Tang Yuyu. "You have the choice, I don't." "I'm doomed," said Yun Fei Yang, smiling. There were only 16 people left. So only the first 8 would be able to choose their opponents. "Same for me," said Qingming Xian. Immediately after, she looked at Lin Feng and said, "Choose me, I will let you win." Lin Feng looked at her beautiful face and shook his head resolutely. "No need to try and tempt or seduce me." Qingming Xian looked at Lin Feng angrily. Then she lied down and put her head on Lin Feng's legs and closed her eyes. Her cleavage was directly in Lin Feng's field of vision like 2 mountains. His eyes started peeking at the sides. "It seems like I'm doomed," sighed Qingming Xian in a cute way. She wouldn't be able to finish in the top 8. Chapter 644. A blood-like sword. Lin Feng sighed again when he heard Qingming Xian. It was a good thing that he had obtained the first jade key. Qingming Xian had obtained the 11th jade key, so she would end up fighting against the strongest geniuses of the competition. Indeed, the first one to choose was Lin Feng, and the second one was Tang Yuyu. So the 8 strongest geniuses would probably challenge her and she would probably get eliminated. After 1 hour, the battles were about to start again. Xue Wuchang looked at those 16 geniuses. Their pupils were all twinkling. The real battles were about to start for real. Xue Wuchang looked at those 8 people and announced, "The 16 last people won't be eliminated easily. The rules will change. We want a precise ranking list in the end." Huh. The crowd wasn't ready. The rules were going to change? Indeed, they needed a precise ranking in the end for the competition to be fair. It seems like things won't be as sad as I thought for myself, said Qingmeng Xian, who was lying on Lin Feng's legs, smiling in a seducing way. Lin Feng was a bit surprised when he said, "You already knew that it was going to end up like this, right?" Qingmeng Xian looked at him and smiled. Every round is like this. How could the last 16 cultivators get eliminated that easily without any rule? What about the 8 last ones? And 4 last ones? Only morons like you cannot understand such things. Eh? Lin Feng scratched his head. She was making fun of him and he didn't know what to say. But Qingmeng Xian was right. Would people get eliminated endlessly? That didn't sound credible. Alright. You need to understand the rules now, said Xue Wuchang. First, those who have the best jade keys can take the initiative just as before. But this time if you choose someone and lose the battle, you must give it to your opponent and you'll obtain the very last one. Lin Feng was smiling wryly. He had obtained the first jade key, but if he lost he would end up last. And everybody else would raise up in the rankings. Lin Feng had no choice, he had to win every matchup. After the 8th battle your jade keys will have new numbers, but those numbers won't be your final ranking. I will bring you to another place where you will have wonderful opportunities. If you are talented enough, your cultivation level will increase. As expected, some more opportunities, thought the crowd shakily. They looked full of hope. This time they would have some great opportunities again. Xue Wuchang would bring them to a place where they could increase their cultivation level. Lin Feng's eyes were twinkling. He would always keep in mind Xue Wuchang's words. He couldn't waste the first jade key because it would mean even more at that moment. Keeping the first jade key would guarantee him the best treasures. The treasures were probably different depending on which key you possessed. The first one was probably the best one. Keeping the first key wouldn't be impossible, but it would be difficult. But now he had to do it. After coming back from this special place with your treasures, everybody will have to fight again. Then we will see who the strongest ones really are. I will tell you the new rules then, and afterwards we will know the precise ranking of the 16 winners of the great competition of Xueyu. Finished Xue Wuchang. He then looked at everyone again and said, "Do you understand?" The crowd nodded. Xue Wuchang's explanation was easy enough to understand. Alright. Let's continue the fights then. Don't forget to protect your keys. It seemed like Xue Wuchang was looking at Lin Feng specifically when saying this. Lin Feng was serious and solemn now. That battle was going to be decisive for him. If he lost, he would miss a great opportunity and would miss incredible treasures. If he lost, he would obtain the 16th key, the very last one. He couldn't lose. Lin Feng jumped in the middle of the fighting stage and looked at the other fighters. He had to choose one person out of those 15. They were staring back at Lin Feng. They were all hoping that Lin Feng would choose them. They all considered him as the weakest cultivator of the group. Finally, Lin Feng looked at the 15th person. That 15th person had ranked 16th, and during the last series of battles, he relied on some simple agility techniques to win. "You," said Lin Feng. That person looked a bit tense but immediately smiled. Fighting against Lin Feng was the best thing that could happen to him. He then jumped forwards like a swallow and landed in front of Lin Feng. "Thank you," he gestured towards Lin Feng. He was thanking Lin Feng for having chosen him. "Are you sure that you want to thank me?" asked Lin Feng indifferently. That person nodded and said, "I saw you fight. Even though your golden Buddha body is a strong attack, and even though you can defeat cultivators of the 7th Xianqi layer, you are extremely slow. I can do whatever I want with you. I can't understand why you chose me." "You think that you will win and thus thanked me, right?" asked Lin Feng. "Indeed. Thank you for choosing me. I will cripple your cultivation," said that person, leaving Lin Feng speechless. "I choose you so you thank me jokingly. Now you plan to win and cripple my cultivation, eh? But I'm also saving you from getting humiliated. It means that if anyone else chose you, you'd have absolutely no chance," said Lin Feng. The other nodded and said, "You're smart, but you did something stupid too. Alright. Since you're so confident, I will give you a chance now. We will see if you can thank me again after the battle," said Lin Feng, slowly raising his hand and grabbing the sword on his back. The crowd was stupefied. Apart from his Buddha attacks, Lin Feng also used swords. A metallic sound spread in the air when Lin Feng unsheathed his sword. That sword was red like blood and particularly dazzling. On that sword there was blood and sword energy. Huh. The crowd was astonished. Since when could Lin Feng use a sword? A terrifying sword energy then emerged out of his body and emitted whistling sounds. In a flash, Lin Feng was surrounded by a sword light. So I'm too slow when I use my golden body? Did you wonder if I could use anything else? Said Lin Feng indifferently. Immediately after, a terrifying sword energy started rolling out of his sword and into the air. That person was astonished. What a terrifying blood sword. That chi was really frightening. You made me use this sword, said Lin Feng. Then he jumped forwards and threw himself at his enemy. It seemed like his terrifying sword energy was about to lacerate the enemy. That person then started moving incredibly fast. I don't think that your sword is faster than my agility techniques, said the person coldly. Lin Feng then rose up in the air as well. He was surrounded by sword energy and sword intent. Die! The sword intent and blood energy fused together. That person only saw a terrifying light. The enemy wanted to dodge, but it seemed impossible. He lowered his head and saw some blood dripping. Your agility technique is fast, but I am faster, said Lin Feng. That person's heart pounded violently. If Lin Feng goes back to Shuiyu after the great competition of Shuiyu, apart from Duan Wu Dao, nobody will be able to compete with him anymore, thought Pajun impatiently. After obtaining the great treasures of the academy, and with his bloodthirsty sword, who would be able to rival with him? His goal can't be Shuiyu. He will become famous in the empire, or even in the holy city, said Xiaoya while clenching her tiny fists. She looked excited. The holy city? What is that place? Asked Pajun unknowingly. He had never heard that name. Xiaoya looked at him and when she saw that he looked confused, replied, The incredible geniuses of the great competition of Shuiyu are considered as ordinary people in the holy city. Mi Chang or even Shengong are considered as tiny little spheres of influence in the holy city. Besides, in the holy city there is only one sect. Pajun and Han Man were astonished. Their eyes were twinkling. The geniuses of the great competition of Shuiyu were ordinary people in the holy city. The mysterious sphere of influence called Shengong was also small there. Was it a gigantic city? Where is the holy city? Asked Han Man. He was extremely curious. Pajun shook his head and said, We don't need to know that, we are tiny little insects. We will know when the right time comes. Ha ha, you will. Big brother will leave Shuiyu, will even leave Shuiyu. He will become an extremely strong cultivator on the continent of the 9 clouds, said Xiaoya. She was full of confidence for Lin Feng. Lin Feng looked like her real brother, like the one her grandfather sung of. A young hero reaching the clouds who would step on mountains and rivers someday. Unfortunately, her real brother had died. He couldn't take care of her anymore, but now Lin Feng had become like her real brother. He was taking care of her and loved her like a real little sister. Han Man and Pajun nodded. Indeed, Lin Feng would become a monstrously powerful cultivator on the continent of the 9 clouds. He had to leave the tiny little country of Shuiyu, and even the small region of Shuiyu. Tang Yuyu then moved to the middle of the fighting stage. It was her turn to choose. Just like Lin Feng, she had to win not to lose her jade key. She had the second one, so losing it would be a catastrophe because she would end up at the end of the rankings. She then looked at the different potential opponents. Amongst those in the top 10, she didn't feel like fighting anyone. Apart from Lin Feng, she couldn't defeat any of them anyways. Qingmeng Xian and Yun Fei Yang couldn't fight, they had become friends too. I choose you, said Tang Yuyu, looking at the 13th woman with the ice soul skill. That girl looked at Tang Yuyu and remained emotionless. Her chi was ice cold just like her skill. She jumped and landed in front of Tang Yuyu. Let's see who can win in one attack. What do you think? Asked Tang Yuyu. The other glanced at her and said, All right. It didn't matter if she lost the battle or won. That girl had nothing to lose. That's why she didn't refuse Tang Yuyu's proposition. Participating at the competition was already amazing for her. Be careful, said Tang Yuyu and suddenly turned into 1,000 dream shadows, which then turned into real clones. They were everywhere. That girl suddenly moved backwards and abruptly, The atmosphere became ice cold. Snowflakes started falling in the air. Absolute zero freeze. Gotcha. The temperature was ice cold, piercing to the bones. Even the crowd felt ice cold. Surprisingly, a layer of ice appeared on the fighting stage. Besides, in the middle there was a blizzard. It seemed like Tang Yuyu's clones were going to freeze and turn into statues. What a terrifying coldness, thought Lin Feng, speechless. He was also feeling the cold. That coldness actually froze Tang Yuyu's clones. Huh. Something moved? In the ice, a silhouette moved and attacked the girl. She turned around and in a flash, she knew what it was. She moved backwards and raised her head, spitting out ice and snow. It shot out towards Tang Yuyu. Break, shouted Tang Yuyu. Her body broke the ice, her black hair was moving in all directions, and then she suddenly disappeared. But quickly she appeared in front of that girl. Destroy, said the girl, attacking Tang Yuyu again. The ice and Tang Yuyu's fists collided. In that flash her body was frozen again. Had Tang Yuyu lost? Immediately after, a crackling sound spread in the air and the girl moved back of a few meters. There was still blood on her hands, but blood was splashing out of her mouth. I see, said the girl sorrowfully. Tang Yuyu's strength could surprisingly cross ice. That must be a particular aspect of her skill. You win, said the girl while moving back. Some cracking sound spread in the air and Tang Yuyu appeared in the open air again. She had managed to protect the second jade key. Chapter 646. Titans Battles. Phew. Tang Yuyu took a deep breath. That battle hadn't been easy. The next cultivators were all monstrously strong. They had all broken through to the 7th Xianqi layer or above. Every battle would be monstrous. Tang Yuyu moved back next to Lin Feng. When Lin Feng saw that her body was still surrounded by a layer of ice, he released some fire qi and heated her up. The ice melted away quickly. Thank you, said Tang Yuyu, smiling resplendently. Lin Feng nodded and looked at the stage again. The third battle was Di Ling's. Di Ling had chosen the person who was ranked 14th. It was a cultivator whose body was as solid as steel. However, Di Ling defeated him in one punch. The third battle was Duan Wu Dao's. He chose the person who ranked 12th and used a sword. Just like Di Ling, Duan Wu Dao defeated him in one extremely brutal punch. Those two are extremely brutal, thought the crowd after watching Di Ling and Duan Wu Dao. Everybody had already forgotten that Duan Wu Dao came from a country under the jurisdiction of Dragon Mountain. They only knew that he was monstrously powerful. Nobody dared belittle him. He could definitely compete with Di Ling. They also heard about Duan Wu Dao's sealed doors blood spirit. They could seal other people's cultivation. The fifth battle was Jun Emoshi's. Jun Emoshi frowned and then smiled wryly when he arrived in the middle of the fighting stage. I'm the fifth one. Jun Emoshi looked at his jade key, thought for a few seconds. From Lin Feng to Duan Wu Dao, they had chosen people who weren't part of the top 10. There were only 2 people left amongst the weakest cultivators. Qingmeng Xian and Yun Fei Yang. He felt really embarrassed he couldn't choose them. Thus, he could only choose someone from the top 10. There were Shui Sha Yumo Ling Xiao Yu Xiao Xiao and the Dead Tree. Huh. The crowd was astonished. Come, said Jun Emoshi. Umo was astonished. He looked to his left, there was Shui Sha. And then he looked to his right, there was Ling Xiao. Immediately after, he looked at Jun Emoshi again and realized that Jun Emoshi was really looking at him. He was astonished. Umo's eyes were twinkling though. How interesting, Jun Emoshi had chosen him. The crowd was stunned as well. Jun Emoshi was choosing him? Really? Everybody was looking at him. Jun Emoshi had chosen him. Jun Emoshi was a genius from Dragon Mountain, and was one of the 8 most outstanding young disciples of the competition. During the second round he had obtained the 5th jade key. Umo was a genius from Firmament and was also one of the 8 most outstanding geniuses of the competition. During the second round he had obtained the 7th key. Now Jun Emoshi was challenging him? Phew. The crowd looked terribly excited, they were shivering. Finally, 2 monstrously strong cultivators were going to fight. They were both one of the 8 most outstanding disciples at the competition. Who was the strongest one? Jun Emoshi or Umo? You chose me? Asked Umo. He was slowly standing up and staring at Jun Emoshi. I think so. I find you and Shueisha the ugliest, but since you are weaker, I chose you, explained Jun Emoshi. Everybody was surprised he said that. Some people were smiling wryly. With that kind of reasoning, he must not care about his jade key? Alright. Very good, said Umo, looking more and more evil. Then he jumped forwards and landed in the air above the fighting stage, where a monstrously cold energy invaded the atmosphere. He glared at Jun Emoshi and said, very good. No matter what you think, I am curious to see if you will be able to keep your 5th jade key. Let's see how strong you are then, said Jun Emoshi indifferently. He didn't look aggressive at all, he only looked calm, serene, maybe relaxed. He definitely looked like he didn't care. Maybe that his self-confidence enabled him to despise Umo. However, Jun Emoshi didn't look conceited either, so it was difficult to know what he was thinking. You will see, said Umo. Immediately his eyes turned white and gray. His 8 trigrams eyes had appeared. He looked like Spider with those eyes. Die! Shouted Umo furiously as several illusional trigrams started moving towards Jun Emoshi to oppress his body. They're going to fight now, thought the crowd. They were all shivering while watching them. 2 of the 8 most outstanding geniuses of the competition were going to fight against each other for the first time. Boom! Jun Emoshi's body was completely surrounded. His long hair was fluttering violently. But still Jun Emoshi remained calm and serene as before. He slowly moved his head to look at Umo. The crowd believed Jun Emoshi looked like a holy man. His chi was pure, elegant and holy. Boom! The 8 trigrams in the air soared to the sky and were suddenly surrounded by a golden light that detained them. Those golden lights were gigantic, like skyscrapers jetting up. Boom! That gigantic pure and holy golden light turned into a hurricane as the 8 trigrams were destroyed. Jun Emoshi's chi was incredible and oppressive. How strong, thought the crowd, speechless. They had never seen Jun Emoshi release any chi before. What powerful energy! What skill was he using though? Umo was surprised. His 8 trigrams had been destroyed by Jun Emoshi's golden chi. How? Vital energy of the world, said Jun Emoshi while jumping forwards. Rumbling sounds spread in the air as his chi abruptly became even more imposing. Down the mountains and through the rivers, a gigantic hand made of golden chi emerged and rolled in the atmosphere towards Umo. That chi was altering the entire space. The vast fighting stage was suddenly covered by a vital chi. It was the vital chi of the earth and the sky. Break! Shouted Umo while releasing some pure chi. His white and gray pupils looked colder and colder. Whistling sounds were increasingly strident. It seemed like it was going to be difficult for Umo to block the vital chi of the earth and sky. Boom, boom, boom. A terrifying chi suddenly rolled and tossed over in the atmosphere. That chi was terrifying and oppressive. How terrifying! Umo had the feeling he couldn't condense energies or strength anymore. He was just being oppressed violently. Illumination of the heavenly bodies, said Jun Emoshi. In the air there was the vital chi of the earth, of the mountains, the rivers, and of the heavenly bodies. The air was filled with purity, holiness, and righteousness. The crowd was shivering, everybody became solemn. They were feeling guilt build up in their hearts. That vital chi was filled with righteousness, which made sinners feel guilty. Umo's heart was filled with poison and evilness, so it was difficult not to be affected. His strength was being completely oppressed. He had no determination to fight anymore. He just stared at the pure and holy chi, which was becoming even more magnificent in the sky. His facial muscles were twitching. How come? Jun Emoshi's strength was really terrifying. 8 trigrams, shouted Umo. His eyes were radiating evil. His chi moved towards the vital chi in the air. Vital chi of righteousness, destroy evil and sinners, sung Jun Emoshi. Each of his words were releasing pure vital chi which attacked and collided against the 8 trigrams. They vanished. Umo was unable to release his 8 trigrams spirit properly. Boom! Some spirit chi emerged in the air. The 8 trigrams appeared behind Umo. His eyes were bloodshot. That's enough, shouted Shui Wuchang at that moment. He sounded furious. Umo was astonished. It's the end of the battle. No need to continue, said Shui Wuchang indifferently. With Jun Emoshi's vital chi of righteousness, continuing the fight was useless. Shui Wuchang already knew how the battle would end if they continued. Chapter 647 Everybody give up. There really are too many geniuses, thought Xue Wuchang. Jun Emoshi could use pure and unadulterated vital qi of righteousness. How rare and how difficult, especially to make it reach such dimensions. It was extremely hard to learn. In order to learn vital qi of righteousness, one required a pure heart and couldn't commit sins. One's vitality and soul had to be pure. Sinners couldn't give birth to vital qi of righteousness. That skill was the reflection of one's personality. Stop now. Umo raised his head and looked at Xue Wuchang. He didn't understand why the battle had to stop. Just a moment before Jun Emoshi had just oppressed his body. Why would the battle stop? Umo wanted to regain face. He had just been humiliated. You lost, said Xue Wuchang. Umo didn't know what to say, so he pulled a long face. Xue Wuchang was humiliating him in front of everybody. Even though you didn't lose in terms of strength, you lost in your heart. What you need to do is not think about regaining your prestige, but instead change your state of mind. If you are unable to change your state of mind, then you will miss out on the wonderful opportunities that await you ahead. At that time you will lose again, said Xue Wuchang slowly to Umo. Umo's face looked hideous. He understood what Xue Wuchang meant. After all, Umo wasn't stupid. Jun Emoshi was indeed extremely strong, and that vital qi of righteousness could destroy evil qi. A moment before, Umo had wanted to release his spirit, but Jun Emoshi wouldn't have struggled with it. That was indeed his defeat. We will fight again, said Umo coldly to Jun Emoshi. He then moved back to his seat. We can play together anytime, said Jun Emoshi smiling. He looked free, natural and unrestrained. When he moved, his vital qi of righteousness disappeared, and he looked like an ordinary young man again. There was nothing strange about him. Jun Emoshi moved back to his seat. In their hearts, everybody felt even more respect for Jun Emoshi. Maybe Jun Emoshi was one of the 3 best cultivators of the competition, along with Duan Wu Dao and Di Ling. Lin Feng and Tang Yu were extremely strong and had obtained the first jade keys. But compared with someone like Jun Emoshi, they were still very far. At least in their eyes. Jun Emoshi's vital qi of righteousness was monstrously powerful. Umo didn't have a chance to resist it. Umo was one of the 8 most dazzling geniuses of the competition, but he was still inferior to Jun Emoshi. Before the battle, everybody had wondered which of them were stronger. And the competition was full of surprises. Jun Emoshi, who didn't look as strong to begin with, was actually obscenely strong. Being aggressive and arrogant didn't mean anything to someone like Jun Emoshi, who was always calm, serene and gentle. Many had thought that Jun Emoshi was one of the weakest of the 8 most outstanding geniuses. But they just misunderstood his temperament. After Jun Emoshi's fight, it was the 6th person's turn, Xue Sha. Xue Sha stood up and chose Qingmeng Exine. Qingmeng Exine had a resplendent smile on her face. She looked to Xue Wuchang and said, "Mister, I am too weak, can I give up?" The crowd was astonished, but then they understood her. She was a girl. Beating Xue Sha would be extremely difficult. Forfeiting was a way to admit that she had already lost. "You can. You're here so you can choose to fight or not," said Xue Wuchang, nodding. "Thank you, mister," said Qingmeng Exine, looking honest. She then said to Xue Sha, "I give up." "Humph." Xue Sha groaned coldly. He wanted to try a skill, but Qingmeng Exine hadn't given him the possibility to try it out. He didn't like winning that way, especially after Jun Emoshi's victory. It should have been Yumo's turn after Qingmeng Exine gave up, but he had been defeated already, so it was Ling Xiao's turn. Ling Xiao only could choose between 3 people. Yu Xiaoxiao, Ku Yaotung the Dead Tree and Yun Fei Yang. I wonder if I could defeat Ku Yaotung. If I fight against Yun Fei Yang, Yu Xiaoxiao will have to fight against Ku Yaotung, thought Ling Xiao. His choice was too hard. In the end, he looked at Yu Xiaoxiao and said, "Let's give up together." When she heard him, she knew what he meant and nodded. Then he looked at Xue Wuchang and said, "Mister, I challenge Yu Xiaoxiao and we give up together." They didn't feel like fighting anymore. They were just thinking about the great opportunities Xue Wuchang had talked about. They wanted to know what they were, and if they'd be able to break through to the next cultivation layer after. "Okay," said Xue Wuchang, not refusing. Immediately after, he looked to Ku Yaotung and Yun Fei Yang. They had no choice. The last battle had to be between them. If Ku Yaotung lost the battle, he would lose his jade key. But if Yun Fei-yong lost, he had nothing to lose because he already had the last jade key. Do we need to fight? Asked Ku Yaoting to Yun Fei-yong. He didn't even move to the middle of the fighting stage. Let's try, replied Yun Fei-yong. The crowd thought that Yun Fei-yong was going to give up. That battle wasn't going to be great. The crowd could not believe that he would win. The dead tree was speechless, but then his eyes were twinkling as he said, "All right, let's try then." He jumped onto the fighting stage and watched Yun Fei-yong sharply. "Come if you want to fight," said Ku Yaoting. He then released some dead tree chi. His eyes looked absolutely livid and cold. Yun Fei-yong landed on the fighting stage and said, "Ku Yaoting the dead tree, I want to know where your nickname comes from." "You will see," said Ku Yaoting coldly. His pupils turned gloomy, he looked dead. The entire atmosphere filled with the death chi and an eerie silence invaded it. It seemed like everything was dying around Ku Yaoting. Yun Fei-yong wasn't far from him, but the death energy around his body didn't feel pleasant. It seemed like he could die at any moment. Ku Yaoting then made a step forwards and some withered chi spread through the air. However, Yun Fei-yong smiled devilishly from the corner of his mouth. He looked particularly amused. "I'm sorry, I give up," said Yun Fei-yong abruptly. Everybody was astonished. Yun Fei-yong had asked for a battle and then suddenly gave up. Ku Yaoting was furious, but he didn't even have time to react. That Yun Fei-yong was already back to his seat. He smiled resplendently and said, "I wanted to see your chi. Now that I saw it, there is no need to continue." "You're playing with me," said Ku Yaoting menacingly. "I think that everybody wants the battles to end as soon as possible," replied Yun Fei-yong joyfully. Everybody wanted to see the great presence from Sheng Gong. Yun Fei-yong had given up right out, which meant that the battles had come to an end for now. Each jade key probably enabled cultivators to access different treasures. Lin Feng would probably obtain the best treasure then. The first round was about getting skills in the temple, so this time wouldn't be about getting skills or techniques. Maybe it's about making us smarter and increasing our power of understanding. Maybe we will understand cultivation layers even better, said Jun and Mo Shi. Shui Wuchang had told them that they would first get treasures and then fight again. So what were those treasures? Would they drastically change their cultivation abilities? Would they influence the next battles? Nobody knew anything. Lin Feng and Jun and Mo Shi were no exceptions. After 2 days, Shui Wuchang slowed down. In front of them was a mysterious chi. It was an illusion. "We arrived," said Shui Wuchang. He stopped and everybody else stopped with him. They all looked to Shui Wuchang. They had arrived? There was nothing in front of them, only clouds? Were there treasures there? In front of them appeared a gigantic cloud. They were confused. Suddenly, some clouds rolled apart and a magnificent light appeared. Their hearts began to beat faster. In front of them, clouds opened and a path appeared. "What's this?" The crowd was astonished. How intriguing! That was an illusionary door. A moment before, there had been clouds, but now there was an illusionary door. Inside, there was a hole that looked like another world. "Come," said Shui Wuchang, passing through the door. The crowd followed him, and then they sensed that their pure chi was becoming chaotic. How pleasant! The pure chi of the earth and the sky is very thick here, thought Lin Feng, pleasantly surprised. He turned his head and saw that the illusionary door had closed itself. They had really arrived in another world. Under their feet, the pure chi of the earth and the sky was rolling. Lin Feng had the feeling that this place was like a fairy tale, like those he had watched on the TV in his previous life. There were celestial palaces above the clouds. "That place is Shengong," said Shui Wuchang. Everybody was astonished. Shengong was that entire mystical place. Clouds kept rolling over. That place was proof of Shengong's power. On the path of cultivation, there really are no limits, thought Lin Feng, terribly excited. Creating such a world was monstrously difficult. Who could create such a world? What was the cultivation layer of the one who had created it? "Protector Shui," shouted a person in the distance. It was a young man in armor. He then nodded to Shui Wuchang. That young man was about 25 years old and his chi was enigmatic. He was even stronger than Umo. That person was different from the 8 most outstanding geniuses of the competition. His armor just like his eyes were twinkling. Hao Peng, come. These people are for you, said Shui Wuchang to the young man. Hao Peng nodded and said, in 7 days I'll bring them back. All right, said Shui Wuchang, nodding. Immediately after, he looked at the crowd and said, go with Hao Peng. He knows where to take you. Everybody looked at Hao Peng. He also stared back at them. He looked calm and serene, maybe even a bit proud. So those are the strong cultivators from Shuiyu. They're not that strong, thought Hao Peng while observing them. Of course, he wasn't going to tell them that. People didn't have the feeling that Hao Peng was nice because of the way he looked Ling Xiaoxiao, Qingming Xian and the other girls. He had even frowned while looking at Tang Yuyu as if he had wanted to say something but hadn't. Come with me, said Hao Peng. They then all followed closely behind him. They could see many palaces in front of them. What an astonishing architecture! The qi of the earth and the sky was extremely dense and pure there. The palaces were gigantic, just like wonderlands. If they had practiced in that place before, they would have already reached monumental cultivation levels. Sects and countries would become extremely powerful if their people could train there. Shui Wuchang is our protector, but he has limits to where he can take you. There are many places where he cannot go, so I have to do it for you, explained Hao Peng. Everybody was surprised. Shui Wuchang couldn't go just anywhere. He was only a protector. What an incredible place. Chapter 649. The banquet. Hao Peng was leading the way and was followed by the geniuses of the competition. But as before, nobody could see where they were going. That place is gigantic, thought Lin Feng. They had been flying for such a long time but still hadn't arrived. How big was that place? There was still an endless sky all around them. Lin Feng didn't understand precisely who the Shengong people were or how strong they were. Suddenly Lin Feng was in a new place. In front of him was a passageway that was about 20 meters wide. There was a gigantic and magnificent gate at the entrance, and Shengong North was written above it. There are 4 districts here: Shengong North, Shengong South, Shengong East and Shengong West. Shengong North is one of the most prestigious districts. So much so that protectors like Shui Wuchang cannot come here, explained Hao Peng before entering the passageway. Lin Feng and the others continued to be surprised, but followed him into Shengong North. After the passageway they arrived in a new area that reminded them of the outside. However, palaces were a bit smaller, and there were cultivation fields. This seemed like a place was for residents. There were all sorts of skills, bicycles, sword skills, etc. Everybody could see that. When will we arrive? Asked Diling. He was starting to get upset. They had been there for a while already. Immediately, said Hao Peng. Shengong is like heaven. You've never seen such a place before. Your eyes can now open. It's an incredible place which will enable you to understand the world even better. It's a place for strong cultivators. It's a place where you realize how tiny you are. Don't think that you are real geniuses because you are a little strong in Shuiyu. Actually, you are worthless. I have seen authentic geniuses in my life, and I don't consider any of you as one. What? They were astonished when they heard him. He had actually made them quite upset. Hao Peng was making fun of them and insulting them. How strong are you in Shengong then? Asked Diling mockingly. I am one of the top geniuses. I belong to the Shengong North, said Hao Peng. You are from Shengong, where the qi of the earth and the sky is extremely dense. Considering those facts, you are actually a weakling, said Diling. Hao Peng was stupefied. He turned his head and saw Diling's cold smile. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth, said Hao Peng indifferently. Finally, they arrived in front of a gigantic palace. In front of the palace were several silhouettes. It seemed like those people were waiting for them. As expected, Hao Peng jumped and landed on the roof of the palace. He looked at one person respectfully and said, Your Highness, I brought them. You worked hard, said the middle-aged man indifferently. That person didn't sound or look like an incredible person. He looked like your average Joe. Even his qi was normal. That person was the leader of Shengong. What was his cultivation level like? Everybody wanted to know how strong that person was. It is an honor for me to receive so many outstanding geniuses in Shengong North. Since you are my guests, we should have a banquet together. After the dinner we will bring you to the next place," said the leader of Shengong North. He didn't sound proud at all, he just sounded like a nice person. He was probably easy to get along with, he even looked like he respected them already. A banquet, thought Lin Feng. Shengong also prepared banquets. Lin Feng was wondering what that place really was. Lin Feng was a bit upset because of the incredibly beautiful women on the leader's side. All of them had an extraordinary qi. They were all extremely strong and had natural abilities. And yet, they were only following them around. Lin Feng didn't feel at ease. He had the feeling that Shengong was an odd place. What did they want to do? The great competition of Shuiyu was managed by Shengong. What was their goal? Was it really to see who the strongest cultivators were? All of them had never thought about these things until now. But suddenly they were all starting to ask themselves these questions, not only Lin Feng. A group of women in white clothes brought tables, chairs, food. Everything was put on two sides of the table, and the middle was reserved for the respectable people of Shengong North. "All right, everybody, let's start," said the leader of Shengong North. Then they looked at everything and their eyes lit up. That is, the banquet? On the tables, apart from alcohol and food, there were specks of grass and pills. That banquet was luxurious and extravagant. There were grass and pills, and all of them were extraordinary. Everybody could sense the pleasant qi emerging out of them. "Shengong," sighed Lin Feng. That was how strong and rich this sphere of influence was. Ordinary people couldn't imagine such things. Even cultivators like Lin Feng, who had become stronger step by step, who had gone through hardships, had taken risks, and had, step by step, broken through to higher cultivation layers. Maybe Shengong's people, with their wealth, only had to listen to some teachers and partake in some small battles against their fellow disciples. Learning incredible skills and techniques made them monstrously strong. Sometimes they would go out to practice using some grass and pills. They could destroy extremely strong cultivators with all of that. Those who made great efforts in Shengong could become gods. That was the difference between a place like Shengong and a country like Shuiyu. The conditions at birth were different, so the future was different. Of course, Lin Feng wasn't going to undervalue himself. On the path of cultivation, going through hardships and taking risks were wonderful things. Because there were only 4 women, the young men from Shengong moved towards one person each. Those beautiful women looked outstanding and extraordinary. One could see it from their qi. Lin Feng looked right and left. On his left there was Jun Emoshi. On his right there was Tang Yuyu. They were both accompanied. Only Lin Feng was alone. He had only broken through to the 5th Xianqi layer. It was too low for the beautiful women of Shengong. But then a beautiful woman who was drinking alcohol moved towards him. She looked left and right, and then smiled wryly and asked him, "Can I sit next to you?" "Of course," said Lin Feng with a slight smile on his face. That beautiful woman was wearing a blue chong sam, and she sat down on the floor with him. She looked different from the rest. When she saw that Lin Feng was looking at her, she raised her glass and took a sip. Lin Feng also took a sip. The girl who was sitting with him was the most beautiful of all the girls there. But she looked different, she looked lonely and solitary. "You don't like that kind of atmosphere?" asked Lin Feng in a very low voice. The girl raised her head, smiled and said, "We people of Shengong need the purest and strongest blood." Lin Feng was stupefied. He understood what she meant. The banquet had been organized to create couples between the most outstanding geniuses of the great competition of Shuiyu and their people. They needed their women to give birth to incredible geniuses. Therefore there was that kind of banquet. "I understand," said Lin Feng while smiling and nodding. The girl lowered her head and drank her glass of alcohol. And then suddenly, as if she had thought about something, she raised her head again and looked at Lin Feng. "Look, what do you think? If you and I? Would you be willing?" Lin Feng looked surprised. "Just like that? Anyways, if it's not you, it's them. Even though your cultivation level is low, you look handsome to me. You seem to have very high natural abilities. Your blood mustn't be that different from mine," whispered the girl with a wry smile. "Since you don't like selling yourself, why don't you find a lover instead? Wouldn't that be better?" asked Lin Feng. "I am a Shengong girl. We are as outstanding as those young men, but we don't have as much choice as them. We have to find people who have amazing natural abilities. Even if their cultivation level is low, it doesn't matter. You're quite audacious, said Lin Feng while smiling and shaking his head. That place was so huge, with the leader's cultivation level. Even if she was whispering, he could probably hear what she was saying. The leader knows we don't want to do this. But he doesn't care. The most important thing is Shen Gong. He doesn't repent anything at all, said the girl as if she didn't care. Lin Feng was speechless, but that girl was interesting. In other circumstances, Lin Feng might have fallen in love with her. I already have wives, said Lin Feng while smiling. When Tang Yu heard him, she glanced at him and turned her head again. Then she said to Hao Peng, "Go away, I'm not interested in you." Hao Peng was speechless. He had just invited Tang Yu to sit with him, but she was refusing him so outright. He had never thought she would react like that. He was so astonished that he could only pull a long face. Then he stood up and looked at Lin Feng and the girl. Then he looked at the girl and said, "Qing Chan, you're really becoming worse and worse. Choosing a cultivator of the 5th Xianqi layer, that's ridiculous." Then Hao Peng rolled up his sleeves and looked at Lin Feng with discontent. Ignore him, he's very arrogant. He thinks that he's the most amazing cultivator in the world. But there are actually many people in Shengong who are much stronger than him, said Qing Chan indifferently. Hao Peng had already been rejected by that girl in the past. He was still furious, so that's why he was being rude with her. Lin Feng slightly nodded and took a pill from the table, which he immediately swallowed. An incredible feeling invaded his body. It wasn't comfortable at all, but it felt like his pure qi was getting purer than before. After a short time, everybody went back to their own seats, those beautiful women as well. The leader of Shengong North smiled and said, "You are the most outstanding geniuses of Shuiyu, and those are the most outstanding young men and women of Shengong. I organized that banquet so that you can exchange. All right. Since you don't feel like it right now, I will first bring you to the special area." The leader of Shengong North then stood up and said, "Follow me." Everybody suddenly became interested. On the path of cultivation, people were mostly interested in increasing their strength. Everybody rose up in the air and followed the leader. What was that special area the leader had been talking about? They were finally about to benefit from the great advantages of Shengong. Chapter 651. The special area. Apart from the leader of Shengong North and the 15 geniuses, several outstanding cultivators from Shengong followed them too. They were all heading for the special area. After a while, the clouds rolled away and a gigantic area appeared. There was no palace, only a moonlight shining upon clouds. That's clearly another world. There is a moon and a sun. Even at night it cannot get dark. The sun and the moon seem like they will never disappear. Lin Feng looked at the moonlight and was surprised. He had seen many incredible things, but he had never thought such a thing could exist. That was another area of Shengong, the special area. In the past, I went to the fire desert when I crossed the illusionary door in the lovesickness forest. Could Shengong be a place like Tianyahai? Lin Feng suddenly thought about that mysterious place where he had been in the past. Li Shan had helped him fabricate his banner there, but he had had evil intentions. It had been very difficult to escape, and then he had forced his parents to block the entrance to that world and never go back again. It was too dangerous. When Lin Feng thought about that, he raised his head and looked at the sky. "Let's go up," said the leader of Shengong North. The crowd followed, rising higher up into the sky. The clouds were rolling more and more violently. The crowd had the feeling that they were traveling back and forth. They were surrounded by clouds. When they got closer to the sun, 16 gigantic and ancient gates appeared. They could cross those gates. "Those gates all lead to a special place. You have to use your keys to open them," said the leader of Shengong North. That's why there could only be 16 participants in the end at the great competition of Shuiyu, because there were only 16 gates. What would there be behind the gates? Nobody knew. Maybe that the leader of Shengong North didn't know either. Those gates were next to each other. From above, it had the shape of a semicircle. Some gates were very high, some less. Those who have the last two keys can enter the 14th and 15th gates. said the leader of Shengong North. Quickly, Yun Feiyang and the 14th person walked to the gates, took out their keys and opened the gates. The atmosphere vibrated and the gates opened themselves. A gigantic vortex appeared and the two silhouettes disappeared. 13th, said the leader. It was the girl with the ice soul skill. She also entered the special area. The leader continued calling people until the 10th, but at that moment he was speechless. He had also been observing people while calling them, and he had tried to guess who the last ones would be, but Lin Feng was still there? Lin Feng had broken through to the 5th Xianqi layer and was in the top 10? With his cultivation level, the leader could be mistaken. In a flash he came back with Xue Wuchang. Leader, said Xue Wuchang while bowing. Wuchang, I'm very surprised by the current rankings. Tell me, how are those 15 people? Oh, said Xue Wuchang while nodding and then continued, Di Ling and Duan Wudao are extremely strong. They are brutal and violent. They still haven't used their full strength because all of their opponents so far were very weak. They are 3rd and 4th. The 5th one, Jun Mo, she can use vital qi of righteousness. He is very enigmatic and unfathomable. Besides, I don't know what his spirit is. Then the 6th one is Xue Sha and the 10th one is the dead tree. They are similarly strong. Maybe, with the benefits of the special area, the difference will be made for the end of the competition. The most important person amongst the higher numbers is actually the last one, Yun Feiyang. He has a very deep knowledge of cultivation. He shouldn't be the last one. He will be in the top 10. I noticed that too. He's hiding his true strength. He is very enigmatic, said the leader when he heard him. What about Tang Yu and Lin Feng? Tang Yu and Lin Feng entered the temples together. Tang Yu's agility techniques and spirit are very particular. She definitely belongs to the top 10 in terms of strength. I don't know how it will end for her though. We will see, said Xue Wuchang. People would fight until the end to be in the top 10. What about Lin Feng? Lin Feng. Xue Wuchang made a pause and said, he has a terrifying power of understanding. With the strength of the 5th Xianqi layer, he used the memories he obtained in the temple to kill people who had broken through to the very top of the 7th Xianqi layer. He is very young too. I don't quite understand him either. Chapter 652. Amazing Sword, a cultivator of the 5th Xianqi layer who can kill people of the 7th Xianqi layer? The leader of Shengong North was astonished. Xue Wuchang, what do you think will happen in the first special area? Asked the leader. His cultivation will improve, and not only a little. Even if he doesn't break through to the 6th Xianqi layer, he will be able to defeat cultivators of the 8th Xianqi layer, said Xue Wuchang. What if I help him break through to the next cultivation layer? Leader. Xue Wuchang was astonished. The leader wanted to help Lin Feng, so Lin Feng was able to get the first jade key. I hope we have him on our side, said the leader. Then he looked at Qing Chan and said, you and Lin Feng should make friends. Qing Chan didn't know what to say. She had talked Lin Feng because he was alone. She didn't want him to feel embarrassed or lonely. She hadn't thought that he had such monstrous natural abilities at that moment, to the extent that the leader of Shengong North would attach so much importance to him. I will do my best, said Qing Chan while bowing. Qing Chan lowered her head and smiled wryly. The leader of Shengong North nodded and looked at the outstanding boys and girls. You are all the most outstanding disciples of Shengong. Those people are the most outstanding people of Xueyu. They all belong to clans and sects who are not as wealthy as us. They relied on themselves and nobody else to reach such cultivation levels. If Shengong helps them, they will become monstrously powerful. If you manage to steal their heart, it will be beneficial for Shengong and for yourselves. Indeed, leader, said everybody while nodding. A few girls were looking at Qing Chan enviously. She had chosen the best one, Lin Feng, the one who was considered as precious by the leader of Shengong North. All right, I'm going to talk to the respectable master now. The crowd was surprised. The leader of Shengong North was going to talk to the respectable master about Lin Feng. Hao Peng was pulling a long face. He despised the geniuses of Xueyu, but the leader of Shengong North attached such importance to him. He was even going to talk to the respectable master about Lin Feng. Lin Feng entered the special area and found a thick, rich qi of the earth and sky surrounding him. It was 5 times denser than the one outside in the normal areas of Shengong, and 10 times denser than in the outside world. It meant that practicing cultivation was also 10 times faster in such an environment. The qi of the earth and the sky was 10 times thicker than outside. But apart from that, the world didn't seem much different. It was just vast and arid. There was absolutely nothing. There was no sun and no moon either, but it was bright. Lin Feng made a step forwards. He had used the first jade key to come to that place. And there was nothing. How could that be useful to him? How could that be helpful for my cultivation? Thought Lin Feng. However, that arid place looked similar to where Lin Feng had obtained the sword memories. It had then fallen down from the sky and Lin Feng had been able to visualize it. There had been nothing else but a sword. However, at that moment there was only Lin Feng and nothing else. Is there anything special here? Thought Lin Feng. He was in the best special area. There couldn't be only a thick qi of the earth and sky. Otherwise it wouldn't have deserved to be called the first area. Lin Feng sat down cross-legged and started practicing cultivation. It seemed like that vast and arid area came from an ancient memory. It looked ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. In Lin Feng's heart there was only one sword. Lin Feng was remembering the memories from the sword temple in that arid area. That sword appeared again in front of him, and it was surrounded by an incredible quantity of sword energy. A real sword that could lacerate the universe. There was nothing else but the sword for Lin Feng at that moment. He was focused on it. Lin Feng released some sword energy which whistled in the air. The sword qi rolled in the atmosphere. It was terrifyingly sharp. If anyone had been around they would have gotten lacerated by that sword. That sword is in front of me. Strange, thought Lin Feng as he abruptly opened his eyes. A terrifying sword light flashed and his heart started pounding. In front of him, in the desert, there was a sword and it was suspended in air. It seemed like it had existed since the creation of times. It definitely didn't look like it had just appeared. From that gigantic sword there was monstrous intent. Or more precisely, it looked like a special category of sword intent. One glance and he had the impression that the sword was an almighty warlord, and could destroy the continent of the 9 clouds. Führer. In spite of Lin Feng's willpower and determination, he still got propelled backwards a few steps from that sword intent. It is not an illusion. It is real. Thought Lin Feng with his heart was pounding violently. A real sword had appeared in front of him, and it contained real intent. Such a powerful strength was terrifying. One couldn't understand it by looking at it with their eyes. They needed to use their heart to understand it. How come it's like this? And how come the sword memories appeared here in reality? Lin Feng couldn't calm down. Did he only need to think about something for it to appear? Everything seemed to be an illusion except for the sword and its intent. Those were absolutely real. And Lin Feng wasn't crazy. He slowly walked forwards and sensed that real sword. The terrifying sword intent was cutting at his skin, so he didn't continue moving forwards. All of this was part of the memories, and now those memories had turned into reality. It was astonishing. A terrifying sword energy emerged out of Lin Feng's body and whistled in the atmosphere. There was sword energy everywhere. Lin Feng was trying to walk steadily. He wanted to actually sense that real sword and merge with it. In Lin Feng's heart, there were only 4 words: I can do it. The sword qi was becoming increasingly violent, and it was lacerating the atmosphere. But Lin Feng was convinced he could do it. He still had the feeling that it was extremely difficult. The sword energy was monstrously strong, more than what he had expected. It didn't belong to his strength. If it had been a part of his strength, it wouldn't have appeared in the air out of nowhere. What I think becomes true, thought Lin Feng. His heart was still pounding. His sword energy became stronger as he ran towards that gigantic sword in front of him. He wanted to see it for real. Lin Feng stretched his hand and put it on the sword. An incredible sword energy which could cut through the entire world spread in the air. Lin Feng and the sword seemed to have fused together. He was the sword and the sword was Lin Feng. Rise! Lin Feng raised his arm. It was very easy as he managed to rise that sword up in the air. Lin Feng was sure that if he had been a really strong cultivator, those geniuses at the great competition of Shui would have all been insects in front of him. With that terrifying sword energy, he could destroy anything. Lin Feng made another step and jumped up in the air as if he had been trying to attack the sky. There was nothing else in that world but his sword. Lin Feng looked like a sword god. His body was like a sword which could annihilate everything. Will I be like that in the future? Thought Lin Feng, unable to think about anything but his sword. Chapter 653. Sword and Haruka. Lin Feng closed his eyes and remained in the air while firmly holding his sword. He was calmly sensing that extreme strength. He was using his heart to understand the sword. That strength didn't belong to him, but he could clearly sense that the sword energy was reaching the clouds. His sword cultivation was drastically improving. He didn't know how to go and look for it. It was just there in front of him. How convenient. He could immediately sense it this way. He had a feeling that he could control swords better than a moment before. How strong he was becoming. He could understand and grasp information faster and faster like a sponge. That sword intent was becoming a part of himself. In the future, if he could use it, he would progress much faster. That's why the leader of Shungong North told me that what I learned inside the special area would improve my cultivation and also help me in the future, thought Lin Feng. That special area was magical. All the things he thought about could become real. Then he could use them to study. How wonderful! If he had the ability to practice there, he would progress incredibly quickly. After a few months in that incredible area, his power of understanding would also drastically increase. The vast and arid area was filled with sword energy. There was nothing else. He looked particularly proud in the sky. Then he closed his eyes and continued releasing monstrous amounts of sword energy unconsciously. Lin Feng was studying sword cultivation deep in his heart. He was fusing together with his sword. It lasted for a long time, and even then Lin Feng was still immersed in that state. He couldn't stop these feelings that were extremely deep and profound. That kind of environment really helped him improve his power of understanding. Even if Lin Feng had some moments of consciousness, he still refused to open his eyes. He wanted to enjoy every single second in that marvelous place. Each time he visualized the sword, he could progress on the path of cultivation. Learning alone and learning from a strong cultivator were two different things. Extremely strong cultivators could dispel the clouds and see the sun. They could enlighten people with perfect wisdom and flawless teachings. But Lin Feng had become an extremely strong cultivator alone, all by himself. His power of understanding was way more advanced than the majority of people. Suddenly, Lin Feng abruptly opened his eyes and there was a terrifying sword light in the sky. It looked like sunlight, but it turned into a sword light. It looked like the sword of a killer. 5 days. I only have 2 more days, thought Lin Feng. Some rumbling sound spread in the air and the sword lacerated the entire space. The earth and sky were shaking. The sword chi was cutting through them. A massive and terrifying amount of sword chi continued spreading in the atmosphere as the area was lacerated. Then the sword penetrated into the ground of the arid area. 2 more days. I could continue practicing sword cultivation, but I have more abilities that I need to improve, thought Lin Feng. He shook his body and the sword disappeared. The atmosphere became calm again as if nothing had ever happened. That place was truly incredible. After a short moment, Lin Feng sat down again cross-legged. There was no sword anymore, however. A new world appeared. The world formed from the memories of the Haruka. Apart from his sword skills, Lin Feng also had the terrifying strength of the Haruka. He needed to understand it to improve it. The special area gradually turned dark like night. Then a gigantic golden Buddha appeared. It was sitting and suspended in air. Its golden light was dazzling. It was a real Buddha. It could protect all sentient beings from torment and sufferings. Facing the Buddha, there was a pitch-black body. It was releasing a terrifying evil energy which seemed extremely ancient. Just like the yin and the yang, those two seemed like they were fighting. The Buddha kept chanting some mantras in Sanskrit and golden letters came out of his mouth. Those golden letters turned into golden hands, and then its entire body was surrounded by golden hands. On the evil statue there was a black light which turned into a yaksha, but it had the body of an asura. Those lights looked deadly. That black light was the exact opposite of the Prometheus. It was turning into an authentic devil from ancient times. Lin Feng abruptly opened his eyes and looked at the golden light and the black light. He couldn't help but shake. He was standing between the Buddha and the malevolent spirit. They were actually fighting right next to him. Under his feet there were golden and black lights shining too. It was extremely intriguing that an authentic Haruka had appeared. It had the strength to destroy the universe. Lin Feng was standing between the two sides of the Haruka, and had the feeling he was going to drown from their struggle. If someday I can transform into a gigantic golden Buddha and illuminate the world, or turn into an evil and malevolent spirit, and then I could become a Haruka and annihilate anybody standing in my way, thought Lin Feng. He felt like a hero. His heart was burning. He had only broken through to the 5th Xianqi layer, but he was able to participate at the great competition of Shui Yu and dazzle everybody. People had even attached importance to him and respected him. They had told me that I was a rare bird, but compared with authentically strong cultivators, he was still too weak. The Xianqi layer was nothing. That statue with the golden hands could destroy the entire planet if it was challenged. The Haruka could even destroy people's hearts. Lin Feng was convinced that there were no gods in that world, Buddha or Haruka. All that mattered in the end was strength. The strong could annihilate the rest. No matter how strong the Haruka was, a cultivator could become a Haruka. When Lin Feng thought about it, he sat down and looked at the battle between the Haruka and the Buddha. Around his body was a golden light which turned into a gigantic golden Buddha. His entire body was changing and turning into a real Buddha. He then slowly rose up in the atmosphere. He was looking down at the earth. He was above the sky and the stars were within reach. The planet was tiny. Even though Lin Feng knew that it wasn't his own strength, he could still clearly sense it and feel it. At the same time he was studying the teachings of the Buddha and the Haruka, understanding their power. Everything he could understand was going to belong to him, and he would be able to use it after leaving the special area. One day after, Lin Feng was still in the air and his body turned black. He had transformed into an evil spirit. "Go!" shouted Lin Feng furiously. In the atmosphere an azura shot towards the ground. It seemed like it could annihilate anything as a gigantic sound spread in the air, and a large crater formed. It was so deep that one couldn't see the bottom. It looked like an endless abyss. "I really can't wait to use that kind of strength later." Lin Feng stretched his hand and continued practicing evil cultivation. He looked cold. He wasn't a Buddha at that moment, he was a malevolent spirit. I've never really sensed the strength of the evil swords, but here in this special area, I can turn into a malevolent spirit, and then I could use the hands of that body to use the evil swords. Lin Feng slowly closed his eyes and visualized the evil swords to summon them. In the air 9 swords appeared. They looked absolutely calm as they weren't moving at all. Lin Feng opened his eyes and the 9 swords were emitting a terrifying evil light. But then they merged together and became one sword. In that sword was a terrifying evil energy, as well as a terrifying sword energy. That sword looked like that of a sanguinary killer. It looked bloodthirsty and cruel. The evil sword is even more powerful than my gigantic sword. Besides, my gigantic sword is an illusion whereas the evil sword is real and I can actually hold it in my hands. Unfortunately, I cannot control it, thought Lin Feng. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the evil sword. Black clouds started spreading in the air. But at that moment the evil sword looked calm. The evil sword was an object malevolent spirits could use. Maybe only a malevolent spirit could control the evil sword. And right now Lin Feng was an evil and malevolent spirit. Chapter 654. Coming out, Lin Feng was holding the evil sword and the result of the combination of the 9 swords. Lin Feng had turned into an evil spirit. His eyes looked extremely evil, ice-cold, cruel and emotionless. The evil sword was releasing a monstrous evil chi which had fused with his heart. The evil sword had its own life and its own intent. With it, it could influence people's cultivation. Even when he had turned into an evil spirit, his body was getting polluted and influenced. If an ordinary person fused with the evil sword, they would be unable to escape unless they turned into an evil spirit. "Go!" Lin Feng moved his hand. The sword streaked through the sky. It seemed like a fissure had appeared in the air where it had cut. Some rumbling sounds in the air and then the sword disappeared. Lin Feng just had the feeling that he was in a dream. Having the ability to control that sword was incredible, but he would regularly have that feeling in the future. Someday he would become a real Haruka and slaughter everybody. With that evil sword, he would be able to annihilate everything. Lin Feng felt extremely happy and free from worries after that experience. He had the feeling that someone had just showed him the path to enlightenment. Boom boom boom. The special area started shaking intensely. Lin Feng frowned. That world didn't seem too solid. It was probably very difficult for people to remain in it for a long time. Actually, it was probably impossible, otherwise people from Shengong would spend all eternally practicing in there to become incredible geniuses. They would resemble Hao Peng or someone similar. They would be really terrifying. The first special area was a perfect world to increase one's power of understanding. It saved cultivators 1 year or even 10 years of time. That kind of sensation was incredible. Most people would never have such a sensation in their entire life. Sometimes people couldn't break through to the next cultivation layer. If that was the case, then entering the special area could help them overcome their difficulties. Boom boom boom, some loud bangs sounded. The space was shaking. Lin Feng was stupefied. He turned his head around and saw a silhouette walking towards him. Huh? What was going on? There were other people in the special area. That was the first special area. Shengong wouldn't let anything go wrong. But there was a person at that moment, and Lin Feng didn't know who it was. Back. When Lin Feng saw the silhouette getting closer, he started moving back like the wind. However, it was useless. That person was too faster. Lin Feng couldn't see any face though, only a silhouette. It doesn't look good. Lin Feng was astonished. That person was too fast. He couldn't move faster than he was. Lin Feng shivered. A finger landed on Lin Feng's shoulder that made him shake violently. He then shook his head. It was as if he had fallen into a coma. The pure qi all around him started rolling violently and spinning at full speed. Lin Feng's qi was becoming stronger and stronger. It was turning into an incredible essence. Don't worry. I am anointing your head with the purest cream. I am enlightening you with perfect wisdom. Your strength determines the quantity of qi of the earth and sky that you can absorb. With your cultivation level, you don't need to resist. You can easily absorb it and your cultivation level will increase. Just let things go smoothly, said a voice which resonated in Lin Feng's head. Lin Feng had to stop resisting and let the qi flow in his body. After a while, the voice disappeared from Lin Feng's head, and he was sitting cross-legged. He was using his cosmos burning sun skill to make the entire surroundings burn. Huge flames of qi were burning around in the air. A sun pattern appeared on Lin Feng's body. In the sky, even though there was initially no sun or moon, a sun appeared and started shining upon Lin Feng's body. The fire was becoming hotter and hotter. Boom! That terrifying fire became rampant. Lin Feng was bathing in a gigantic sea of flames. That terrifying fire seemed like it could burn the entire space. There was only that fire in Lin Feng's heart. He slowly stood up, but his eyes were closed as before. He raised his hands and 2 suns appeared. Those 2 suns rose up and floated in the sky. Then more suns appeared, up until the 9th sun. They were shining upon Lin Feng's body. This time Lin Feng had an infinite quantity of pure qi sun fire. The suns belonged to him and he could use all of their fire. Burn the cosmos, thought Lin Feng. The flames started burning even more violently. There was nothing but flames all around Lin Feng. The entire arid and vast area was covered with an infinite number of flames. Lin Feng opened his eyes and saw the fire. So that was what it looked like when the skill reached its maximum. When it became an authentic sun skill. Could really burn the entire cosmos. Boom boom boom. The vast and arid area kept shaking. It was more and more violent. Seemed like it was going to collapse. Lin Feng looked sad. 7 days. He really wanted to stay there longer. Every day and there was wonderful. He had made the same progress that he would have made in 1 year's time outside. Unfortunately, he could only stay 7 days in that great world and now it was over. Actually, only Lin Feng was missing in the outside world. Everyone else had already finished their time. They all looked more mature as if they had all made great progress. They hadn't left him though. They raised their heads and looked at the first gate, which was also the highest one. Lin Feng had obtained the first jade key, so he got to train there. They were wondering when he would come out. The first special area is the best one, and is also the place where one can spend the most time. It must be much better than all the special areas where we went. Lin Feng has been there for 7 days. Even if he hasn't changed his skills or anything, he should have broken through to the next cultivation layer, said Tang Yuyu while watching the first gate. Actually, Lin Feng was the only one who had spent 7 days in a special area. Tang Yuyu had been able to stay 6 days in the second area, and she had benefited a lot from those 6 days. Breaking through to the next cultivation layers is only a matter of time. Even if Lin Feng doesn't finish at the top of the rankings this time, he has already obtained a lot, and will have a brilliant future in front of him. He will be even more successful in the future. He is able to progress faster than us, said Junemo Shi in a low voice. When Umo heard that, he groaned coldly and looked solemn. He hated Lin Feng for having obtained the first key. He wished he had spent 7 days in the special area. He didn't even have 5 days to practice cultivation, but now 7 days had finally passed. Outside and around the gate, some clouds appeared as the gate opened itself. A silhouette appeared and descended from the sky. That person's chi was different. However, his cultivation level hadn't changed. He had only broken through to the 5th Xian Qi layer. 5th Xian Qi layer? The leader of Shandong North was surprised. But then sharp lights twinkled in his eyes and a magnificent and radiant smile appeared on his face. That boy is hiding things. If the leader of Shandong North could only see that Lin Feng had broken through to the 5th Xian Qi layer, it meant that he was being fooled by Lin Feng's secret skill to hide his cultivation level. Chapter 655. The Prologue. He's only broken through to the 5th Xian Qi layer. Almost everybody looked at him with disdain. He had spent so much time in a place where the qi of the earth and sky were extremely strong and rich. In the end, it seemed like he had been practicing for 10 days. Besides, breaking through to the next cultivation layer after the 5th or 6th Xian Qi layer wasn't easy at all. It might be that Lin Feng would remain at the 5th Xian Qi layer his entire life. Maybe he wouldn't be able to condense pure qi anymore, and would remain at the top of the 5th Xian Qi layer. Sending a person like you to the first area was a waste of resources, said Umo indifferently. Lin Feng had spent 7 days in there, and hadn't even broken through to the next cultivation layer. If Umo had been in there, he would have become a monster. Umo had entered the 7th special area, but he had only been able to stay there for less than 4 days. During that time he had sensed what it was like to break through to the Tianqi layer. He had realized what it was like to become a monstrously strong cultivator. And concerning his real strength, his cultivation level was now at the very top of the 8th Xianqi layer. He was convinced that those 4 days spent in the special area had enlightened him. He had understood things which would help him break through to the Tianqi layer at some point. When Lin Feng heard Umo, he just smiled indifferently. He didn't have to justify himself because it was pointless. Fighting would be proof enough. Even though we could continue the great competition of Shuiyu now, if you want to consolidate your cultivation here in Shandong, we can delay it by 2 days, said the leader of Shandong North slowly. Everybody looked at him and nobody replied. Nobody was willing to postpone it. Leader, since everything was planned already, let's not delay it, said Diling indifferently. He didn't want to delay the competition. Yes, he's right. We're about to start the last battles. Everybody is waiting for them now. If we delay it, then everybody will be upset and worry. Let's continue now, said Umo. Since he had been injured by Lin Feng during the first round in the evil area, he was furious. On top of that, he hadn't obtained any treasures there. During the second round in the Flood Dragon Cave, he wanted to prove to everybody how amazing he was. He had grabbed a jade key, but then Shueisha stole it, and then Junemo Shi had attacked him too. In the end, he had only been able to grab the 7th jade key. Umo was furious. He needed to prove to everybody that he was actually strong. All right, said the leader of Shandong North. He didn't insist when he saw that everybody was unwilling to stay. Alright, you guys can bring them to the exit of Shengong, said the leader to the young people who all nodded. The leader was asking them to bring them back, which was obviously another attempt to make couples. Qing Chan, didn't you want to leave Shengong for some sightseeing? This time I will allow you to go and watch the great competition of Shuiyu, said the leader of Shengong. Qing Chan was astonished. She quickly glanced at Lin Feng with her beautiful eyes and then nodded. She perfectly understood what it meant. He was asking her to go and make friends with the genius Lin Feng. Alright. You are all geniuses, so don't worry if you lose your battles. You made it so far already. Concentrate on your cultivation now, said the leader of Shengong, trying to comfort everybody. Alright, go now. We're off. Goodbye, leader. Leader, thank you. Everybody was saying goodbye to the leader or thanking him. After all, he was the one who had let them enter the special areas and enabled them to practice cultivation. They could only be grateful. Besides, the leader of Shengong had to be extremely strong. Everybody left. Lin Feng was flying through the sky when someone suddenly appeared next to him. It was the girl who had talked to him before. Qing Chan looked at Lin Feng, smiled wryly and said, I wouldn't have thought that you would fool me. You are actually monstrously powerful. You got the first jade key and entered the first special area. You can only use those special areas once a year. Even the leader of Shengong North cannot use it more than once a year. This time you surprisingly had that incredible opportunity. You never asked me, so why would you say that I fooled you, said Lin Feng while shaking his hand. He was a bit surprised. Only once a year? Only the most outstanding cultivators? This time, Shengong had opened the doors of the special area for the 16 of them, and had enabled them to increase their cultivation level. What was the reason? Were the participants of the great competition of Shuiyu more important than the disciples of Shengong themselves? It didn't seem plausible. In terms of strength and natural abilities, the geniuses of Shuiyu couldn't be stronger than the geniuses of Shengong. How could they rival with them? You're right, said Qing Chan. Lin Feng, do you know why I am here? It's only a coincidence. It's because I talked to you for a few minutes and then the leader of Shengong North asked me to chase you. He hopes that we can become friends and that you will contribute to the glory of Shengong. Lin Feng hadn't replied because Qing Chan had instead. Lin Feng nodded and said, I knew that. Qing Chan smiled resplendently and looked at the sky. Then she whispered, will you accept? I won't, said Lin Feng, shaking his head. Qing Chan nibbled her lips, turned her head to look at him with a wry smile. You seem quite sure. You are leaving me absolutely no margin. Can't you give me face? If I had met you before when I didn't have feelings for anyone else, maybe. You're so beautiful, charming and nice. I would have fallen in love with you, said Lin Feng with a gentle smile. What you mean to say is that I'm too late to receive your feelings? Asked Qing Chan with a provocative smile on her face. Lin Feng smiled wryly. He nibbled his lips and remained silent. Joining Shengong would be incredible for you. With your personality, plus the education Shengong would provide you, you would become so much stronger, said Qing Chan in a low voice. My heart refuses. It would just become a prison for me, said Lin Feng, shaking his head. There were too many forbidden things in Shengong. If he joined Shengong, he really would become stronger, but on the other hand, he would lose his freedom. He would have to listen to Shengong's orders, etc. Lin Feng couldn't live under restrictions. Qing Chan seemed like she could and couldn't understand at the same time. She smiled back and said, no matter what your reply is, if you like me or not, I still want to get out of Shengong and leave with you. Yes, the leader of Shengong had told Qing Chan to stay with him when he was outside of Shengong. Lin Feng wasn't going to refuse. The crowd was leaving Shengong and arriving back to the normal world again. The qi of the earth and sky were becoming thinner. They were not used to how little there was. The 15 cultivators left along with some people from Shengong and headed for the fighting stage at the great competition of Shuiyu. When they returned, they found that the fighting stage had become larger, and around it the crowd had become even noisier. Everyone had shown to watch the end of the competition. They arrived. At that moment, the crowd saw a group of people in the sky. They had left several days before and were finally coming back. Finally, the 15 strong cultivators were back. Who was going to dazzle this time? Chapter 656. Monstrously Strong Cultivators. The Prologue. There are some people with them, they must be cultivators from Shengong, thought the crowd when they saw that there were more than 15 people in the sky. There were beautiful girls there. The strong cultivators had gone to Shengong and were returning with Shengong girls. They were incredibly beautiful and were also extraordinarily strong female cultivators. The 15 finalists also looked different, as if they had changed. It seems like they have greatly benefited from the excursion, thought the crowd. The 15 finalists' eyes were twinkling. They were the strongest cultivators from the 13 countries of Shuiyu. Everybody was wondering how strong they had become now that they had benefited from Shengong's treasures. They had obtained jade keys with numbers from the second round. Lin Feng and Tang Yu had finished first and second, but they would probably fall in the rankings during the final round. Boom! All the cultivators landed on the fighting stage as an incredible qi dashed to the skies. The crowd could sense how strong their qi had become. Lin Feng has become stronger. This time he will astonish everybody, thought Han Man, staring at Lin Feng from his bronze mask. Ling Xiao Yu Xiao Xiao. What a glory for you! You are such dazzling cultivators. In the distance a voice rolled in the sky. The crowd was surprised as they turned their heads. There were a group of people flickering in the sky. The leader had a golden Chong Pao and looked domineering. He held a zither and a sword. He was probably skilled at using them. Teacher, said Ling Xiao and Yu Xiao Xiao, surprised. That old person was their teacher and the patriarch of the strongest sect in the Magnolia Empire, the Yun Shao sect. In Magnolia, the Yun Shao sect was even stronger than the Imperial City clan of Magnolia. The Yun Shao sect also made most of the more important decisions in their country. The crowd was happy to see Ling Xiao and Yu Xiao Xiao's teacher. They were both amazing cultivators in Shuiyu and they were the two most outstanding cultivators of Magnolia. Their teacher had come to Mi Chan, so he must really care about the results of the great competition of Shuiyu. The patriarch of the Yun Shao sect nodded to them and said, "No need to pay attention to anyone else, just focus and try to be the most dazzling ones." "Yes, teacher," they said together. They had joined the great competition of Shuiyu to win. "Could Magnolia ever dazzle anywhere?" asked a cold voice. That voice came from far away where a black cloud had appeared in the sky. It was surrounded by a monstrous evil qi. What a terrifying qi, thought the crowd. They were shaking. Even though the person who spoke was still far away, their qi could be felt by everybody there. It seemed like they were going to drown at it. How terrifying. Mr. In Sha. Several people had recognized that old man. He was the patriarch of the Tian Sha sect, Mr. In Sha. His cultivation was terrifying. And not far from him was someone else. That person was extremely skinny like a skeleton, and it seemed like everything was dying around them. Teacher! Teacher! Shueisha and the dead tree both shouted that word at the same time. Two strong cultivators from Black Wings had arrived, Shueisha's teacher and the dead tree's teacher. Their teachers had come to see them because they also attached great importance to the great competition of Shuiyu. "Humph, walking corpses. Utterly worthless vegetating people," said the patriarch of the Yun Shao sect mockingly when he heard Mr. In Sha. Mr. In Sha was smiling strangely and most evilly. "The first of the competition will be Di Ling," said a loud voice at that moment. Several people from Firmament had arrived too. There was a middle-aged man in a dragon robe. His qi was something like a warlord. It seemed like everybody disappeared when they near him, as if they had to submit themselves. Di Ling's qi was very similar. "Father!" shouted Di Ling to the middle-aged man. Di Ling's eyes were twinkling as he said, "Dad, I will finish first." "I'm waiting to see that." "I hope so," said the middle-aged man full of confidence. Di Ling represented the Firmament Empire. How could he lose? He was the best. Yumo's teacher also arrived with some people from the Firmament Empire, but he just nodded to Umo. Di Ling was the most important person there. Even though Umo was extremely strong, nobody could offend Di Ling. Umo didn't have the Firmament blood like Di Ling, so there was a huge difference. The difference between the two might be defined by their blood alone. He wasn't aiming for the first place but for second. The Firmament Empire had to dazzle. After that, people from Magnolia and Black Wings also arrived and surrounded the fighting stage. Everybody wanted to watch the great competition of Shuiyu. Those geniuses were the future of Shuiyu. A few dozens years later, and they would become the leaders of their empires and countries. They had to be monstrously strong then, or else their empires would crumble. But there was someone else, and he was smiling faintly. That person looked calm and indifferent towards everyone else there. However, that person's chi was that of a king. Why wasn't he saying anything? He just looked at Jun Emoshi and remained standing in the middle of the crowd. It seemed like he was communicating something. Jun Emoshi turned around to look at him too. A faint smile appeared. That person was his father, the Emperor of Dragon Mountain. They're all here, the strongest cultivators from Shuiyu came. The crowd was absolutely speechless this time. It was also a gathering of the strongest cultivators of Shuiyu and the gathering of geniuses. Everybody had come for the great competition of Shuiyu. It seems like the competition is going to be something to remember. The crowd was extremely excited with their fists clenched into balls. It really proved how important the competition was. Everyone could watch the future leaders of Shuiyu improve during the final round of the competition. After it ended, nobody knew what they would do to continue progressing. Hehe. Everybody has come to Michang for the great competition of Shuiyu. What an honor it is for us from Shuiyu to host this competition. However, Shui Wuchang had things to add. Even though these cultivators are your offspring, no matter what happens you cannot intervene. I am talking to the extremely strong seniors now. Otherwise, Shen Gong will come to punish you, threatened Shui Wuchang calmly. Everybody shivered. Shui Wuchang was incredible. He was stronger than those emperors and powerful patriarchs. They all respected and feared Shen Gong. Not everybody could win the competition, so Shui Wuchang was warning them in advance. How aggressive! Shen Gong is too scary, thought the crowd surprised. Even those strong cultivators didn't dare defy Shen Gong. Everybody remained silent. Alright, let's just watch calmly. The great competition of Shuiyu is a fair and equitable competition, said Shui Wuchang indifferently. He looked to the candidates and said, alright, let's get ready for the last battles. Chapter 657. Forfeit. Everybody kept silent when Shui Wuchang spoke. It was 7 days after Shui Wuchang had sent the fighters to the special area. And now they had finally come back. The rules had changed too. People weren't going to be eliminated in one battle this time. There would be too much luck involved if they did that again. He had said that everybody would fight each other so that the strongest fighters would stand out. Shui Wuchang wasn't done talking. This time the last battles are about to start. Everybody is going to fight against each other. The number of victories will determine your position in the rankings. The fighters nodded. Indeed, that kind of battle was extremely fair. The one with the most victories would be ranked first. Nobody could afford to be careless with each fight. Everybody had to win if they wanted to dazzle. This time, almost the entire population of Shuiyu was watching. They wanted to see who the most dazzling cultivators of the region were. Those with the best cultivation levels, skills and techniques should put on an amazing show. Besides, the strongest cultivators of the 4 empires were there to watch too, Shen Gong included. There is something else I want to tell you. This time I will allow you to give up. If you feel like you have no chance of winning and that fighting could affect your following battles, you can give up. Of course, that will count as a loss, said Shui Wuchang. The crowd remained silent. That would allow fighters to save their strength and energy for their next battle without being exhausted. But would it be worth it for a loss? Besides, the order of the battles is based on the same principle as the previous battles. The one with the first Jade Key can challenge who they want. So Lin Feng will be the first one, and then it will be Tang Yuyu's turn. Then after everybody is done battling, it's Lin Feng's turn again. However, there is one rule. You cannot challenge your own self and you cannot challenge someone who has just battled. You must wait until the next round to challenge them, explained Shui Wuchang. As before, the ones with the best Jade Keys could challenge first, but it wouldn't provide with such great advantages. Eventually, everyone would fight everybody else. Everybody would have to fight each other without exception. Apart from strength, endurance was going to be tested here too. I told you the rules and I think everybody understands. Now everybody move aside. Lin Feng, stay here and choose your first opponent. Alright, nodded Lin Feng. He stayed in the middle of the fighting stage and the others gradually moved away. All eyes were on Lin Feng and they wondering who he would choose first. You, said Lin Feng, pointing at the 14th person. That person's strong point was physical strength. His body was like an indestructible iron wall. That person deeply stared at Lin Feng. He expected that he'd be chosen. Lin Feng would probably fight against the strongest cultivators later. Lin Feng and Yun Fei Yang were good friends, so he didn't want to fight him first. Boom boom. That person was making the ground shake after each step. It seemed like the fighting stage was going to cave in. Give up, I don't want to hurt you and influence your next battles, said Lin Feng indifferently. That person was surprised at how arrogant Lin Feng was. That person was 14th, but he was extremely strong. And now Lin Feng was telling him to give up because he didn't want to hurt him? Everyone was surprised when they heard Lin Feng. Another step made the atmosphere vibrate. Even though I only spent 1 day in the special area, I also progressed. Besides, with my corporeal strength I can fight you. You might win, but I want to try at least, said that person. Lin Feng had increased his sword cultivation in the special area, and might be able to kill him with one sword attack. But that person was really strong too. If he didn't fight the first battle, how would he be able to fight the next battles? He would lose credibility. Lin Feng slightly nodded and said, alright, let's fight then. Lin Feng made a step forwards, and in a flash his sword emitted whistling sounds in the atmosphere. He was placing pressure on the physical strength of his opponent. Sword force and physical strength force were colliding in the air. That person violently trampled on the ground towards Lin Feng when he sensed how sharp the sword energy was. Boom boom boom. A terrifying physical strength was shaking the entire fighting stage violently. Physical strength cannot win against my sword, whispered Lin Feng. And then he launched forwards. Zirr. Zirr. A terrifying sharp sound spread in the air. It seemed like sword chi was going to lacerate the entire atmosphere. Lin Feng's sword had started to look like that of a monstrously strong cultivator. It could finally lacerate the atmosphere, but it was only the start though. What a terrifying sword, thought the crowd staring at Lin Feng's sword. 7 days before, they had seen how terrifying Lin Feng's indestructible golden body was. And then they saw Lin Feng's terrifying bloodthirsty sword. It was then that they had realized how terrifying he was. Now they realized that Lin Feng's sword ability had increased. Lin Feng was giving off the feeling that he had perfectly fused with his sword. His sword intent was terrifying. It was more terrifying than any simple human sword fusion. His sword intent was jaw-dropping. As expected, sword intent. The crowd sighed. Last time they hadn't sensed it clearly, but this time the sword intent was fierce and swift. Lin Feng's opponent already looked glum. Lin Feng's sword was putting too much pressure on his body already, and that sword intent actually cutting the air. It was moving towards him and emitting terrifying whistling sounds. His own physical strength force didn't have a chance. As expected, I doubted his abilities previously because last time he defeated a cultivator of the same strength as me. But training in the first special area, I already lost now, thought Lin Feng's opponent. His physical strength force was moving back. He looked at Lin Feng and said, I lost. He had lost. He wasn't going to try and fight. Lin Feng's terrifying sword energies immediately disappeared. He didn't put any more pressure on his opponent. He just smiled and nodded. Then he moved aside. After watching Lin Feng, the crowd was wondering what his real strength was. It seemed like he had only broken through to the 5th Xianqi layer, but with his terrifying sword intent, he could easily annihilate cultivators of the 7th Xianqi layer. He was probably hiding his real cultivation level. Lin Feng had probably become stronger. People were impatient to see Lin Feng's next battles to see how strong he had actually become. Who would be able to defeat him and his sword? Then it was Tang Yuyu's turn. She picked the Ice Soul girl again. Last time you lost. I challenge you again, said Tang Yuyu. That Ice Soul girl looked glum. 7 days before she had been to figure out how to resist Tang Yuyu's punches. But she had had no idea the only solution she could come up with was speed. She had to be faster than Tang Yuyu, or her physical strength had to surpass that of Tang Yuyu. However, it seemed impossible, especially seeing how Tang Yu had gone to the second special area, and the Ice Soul girl had gone to the 13th one. She had no chance. I forfeit, you win, said the Ice Soul girl unsurprisingly. She closed her eyes as if she was trying to save some strength and energy for her next battles. Tang Yu nodded. Just like Lin Feng, she moved back to her initial position. Lin Feng and Tang Yu had both won their first battles, so there were 13 more to go. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.